Chapter 1096. Gulp. Heaven and earth fell silent. The black tortoise experts all had complicated expressions on their faces. It was as if they had walked right into a trap. That was ridiculous. An old woman who was nearing the end of her lifespan had broken through to the next realm before the fall of the divine dynasty? Do you think you're the chosen one? How dare you break through before you die? Humph. Jin Yuyang, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you've broken through to the next realm. What did my great-grandson do to be beaten into a retard by the Golden Crow divine dynasty? If you know what's good for you, kill that young man first and then we'll talk. The black tortoise ancestor snorted and looked down at Wu Kuei, who was rolling on the ground with a silly smile on his face. His eyes were cold. The black tortoise divine dynasty had two earthly sovereigns. The Golden Crow divine dynasty only had one earthly sovereign. Even if the two dynasties were to fight, Jin Yuyang, who had just broken through, would not be able to change the situation. The battle between the Flame Dragon divine dynasty and the ancient Qilin divine dynasty was coming to an end. Once Yen Luope killed the ancient Qilin divine ancestor, the Golden Crow divine dynasty and the Black Tortoise divine dynasty would be next. At this juncture, the Black Tortoise ancestor did not believe that Jin Yuyang would dare to make an enemy out of him. Ha! However, what surprised the Black Tortoise ancestor was that Jin Yuyang only smiled and shook her head. She descended from the sky and stood in front of the young man in black. Then, under the shocked gazes of the Black Tortoise experts, she bowed down to the young man. Young master! That's right. Ling Xiao nodded and stepped on Wu Kuei, who was crawling on the ground. He looked up at the Black Tortoise ancestor and said, "He stole my maid. Is that reason enough?" At this moment, Ling Xiao's voice was extremely calm, as if he was talking about something insignificant. But it was this calmness that made people feel even more fearful and unfathomable. Who is he? The Black Tortoise ancestor's lips trembled. He did not dare to spit out the harsh words that were on the tip of his tongue. He had thought that the Golden Crow divine dynasty was so arrogant because Jin Yuyang had broken through to the next realm. They thought that they were qualified to compete with the Flame Dragon divine dynasty. However, it seemed that the young man was the key to the Golden Crow holy dynasty. Could it be that Jin Yuyang's breakthrough was because of this young man? Otherwise, why would a heavenly sovereign bow down to a young man? Who are you? Did you just say that you will definitely kill me today? Ling Xiao shook his head with a gentle expression. I'll give you two options. You can either submit or die. What? The Black Tortoise ancestor's expression changed drastically. Arrogant, simply arrogant to the extreme. How could a young man in the venerable realm ask the patriarch of the divine dynasty to submit to him? Even the young master of the Realm Lord Palace, the young master of Ling people, probably did not have such qualifications. Impudent! Emperor Xian Wu shouted angrily. However, just as he finished speaking, he saw Jin Yuyang frown and directly thrust out her palm. Buzz! The void trembled as an extreme aura of the great Tao began to rise. A blazing divine seal crushed the void and pressed down on Monarch Xian. The saintly aura on the latter's face had not yet dissipated, but it turned into a strong sense of fear. Patriarch, save me! Jin Yuyang, do you really want to fight with me? The Black Tortoise ancestor's eyes widened as he took a step forward and blocked the palm print. Around him, wisps of divine light bloomed and connected out of thin air, turning into the phantom of a demonic beast that exuded an extremely ancient and terrifying aura. Boom! However, the moment the palm print fell, even the Black Tortoise ancestor's body trembled violently, and his eyes were filled with extreme horror. His face turned red, and the aura in his body surged crazily, completely solidifying the Black Tortoise true shadow. Even so, a trace of blood slid down the corner of his mouth. How could it be? Although he had been careless just now and did not take Jin Yuyang's casual palm print seriously. However, even if it was Yen Luopa, it would not be so easy to hurt him. What secrets were hidden in Jin Yuyang's body? How could her cultivation have broken through to such a level in such a short time? The Fusang divine tree was originally the ancestral spirit of the 9 heavens. Moreover, the Golden Crow bloodline had a very deep relationship with this tree. Not only did the divine tree allow Jin Yuyang's cultivation to enter the 3rd grade, but it also transformed her bloodline and gave her the true demonic aura of a crow. Buzz. Suddenly, there was the sound of wind breaking in the void in the distance. One by one, figures with powerful auras stepped from the sky and stood behind the Black Tortoise ancestor. These 1,000 people were the true war generals of the divine dynasty, and the weakest among them had already entered the honorable realm. In front of the crowd, 2 old men appeared from the void. Their auras were vigorous, and they were clearly 2 earthly sovereigns. Just now, the Black Tortoise ancestor had led a group of saints to descend, intending to intimidate the Golden Crow holy dynasty without shedding a drop of blood. After all, once these 1,000 people were displayed, it would be a clear provocation. However, he did not expect Jin Yuyang to be so ruthless and use a real killing move. Humph! Jin Yuyang, you have to think carefully. Seeing that the crowd had arrived, the Black Tortoise ancestor's face immediately turned cold. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked indifferently at Jin Yuyang and the tall and straight youth in black. Did I not make myself clear? Ling Xiao raised his head. His eyes were clear and there seemed to be doubt between his brows. Humph! Young man, no matter who you are, since you dared to cripple my Black Tortoise Crown Prince today, leave your life behind. The Black Tortoise ancestor took a deep breath and suddenly raised his hand. However, just as he was about to give the order to attack the Golden Crow holy dynasty, the sky above his head suddenly darkened. The entire Golden Crow holy dynasty fell into the night. Everyone's faces were filled with confusion. Then, they slowly raised their heads and looked up. There, they saw a huge ancient battleship crushing the void, as if it had come to end the era. That deep and terrifying aura almost made the Black Tortoise ancestor's face turn pale instantly. This is the mysterious heavenly ancient battleship. It's the mysterious heavenly ancient battleship of the Taigu Ling people. How can it be? Why would the Taigu Ling people suddenly come to the spirit god realm? When the black demon guards go to war, not even a blade of grass will survive. It is said that when they appeared in the Shao clan, they destroyed an entire realm. Nonsense, this is simply a rumor. It's clear that he wiped out 10 realms. Exclamations of shock rose and fell. Even Jin Yuyang and Jin Han Er's beautiful eyes flickered with a wisp of shock. Everyone in the azure sky world knew about the mysterious heavenly ancient battleship, but no one had truly seen it before. Because almost everyone who had seen it was dead. It was rumored that this battleship was thousands of feet long and could travel through time and space, destroying the universe. It was the symbol of the Black Demon Guard's divine might. But, suddenly, the Black Tortoise ancestor seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the youth in black below with fear in his eyes. At that moment, a smile appeared on Ling Zhao's face, but the sinister look in his eyes was like the true evil of hell. Gulp. Chapter 1097. Don't tell me, you are Master Ling Xiao? The Black Tortoise ancestor's eyes trembled, and his face turned pale. Everyone in the Qing Tsang continent knew about the young master of the Ling people. Even the reclusive ancient clans and sects knew that the Ling people had a young master named Ling Xiao, who was unparalleled in the world. However, why did he suddenly come to the spirit god realm and have something to do with the Golden Crow? The Black Tortoise ancestor felt a chill in his heart. His body tensed up, and his soul consciousness covered thousands of miles. He was very afraid that an ancient order would suddenly appear in the sky and kill him on the spot. When Ling Xiao was born, the scene of a supreme being of the Ling people killing Ancestor Yi from thousands of miles away was engraved in the hearts of countless heavenly sovereigns in the Qing Tsang continent. Such a celestial aura could be called a demonic barrier, and it made everyone who offended Ling Xiao unconsciously feel fear. Kill! Seeing the panic on the Black Tortoise ancestor's face, Ling Xiao's eyes did not waver, and he only spoke calmly. Suddenly, the void collapsed, and divine light bloomed around the 10,000 demon guard. They were densely packed and looked like a single entity. Layers of killing intent gathered in one place, and it was as if an ancient demon god had awakened from a deep sleep, with boundless battle intent. Even the Black Tortoise ancestor and the other two heavenly sovereigns were trembling. When they lowered their heads to look at Jin Yuyang, their eyes suddenly flashed with panic. At that moment, the Golden Crow ancestor took a step forward, and 1,000 feet around him was engulfed in divine flames, turning into a sea of fire that covered the sky and earth. The deep and brilliant demonic flames were filled with an extremely violent and destructive aura. Even a Saint Realm cultivator would be burned to ashes if they were to touch even a wisp of it. Kill! The 10,000 demon guards shouted angrily and held their halberds horizontally. The grand aura of slaughter rumbled as it descended, and it transformed into a 300 long demonic halberd that swept through the surroundings and cleared the surroundings. Wait a minute! Seeing the halberd in flames fall, the last trace of hesitation in the Black Tortoise ancestor's eyes disappeared, and he immediately shouted angrily. A third-grade heavenly sovereign was already a huge threat to the Black Tortoise. If they offended Ling Xiao now, the Black Tortoise divine dynasty would be completely destroyed. Upon hearing this, Ling Xiao gently raised his hand. The descending demonic halberd of fighting will immediately stopped in the air. Jin Yuyang's footsteps also stopped. Master Ling Xiao, the Black Tortoise old ancestor, took a deep breath and bowed towards Ling Xiao. I didn't know that young master was here today. My dynasty's crown prince forcefully snatched eldest princess Han, and he truly deserved to die. Just now, this old man spoke inappropriately and offended young master. This is also an unforgivable crime. However, I heard that young master is a righteous person. I hope that young master can give him a way out and forgive Black Tortoise. Wu Chong will definitely remember young master's kindness. When the sky demon descended, I came here to slay it. I didn't expect your Black Tortoise divine dynasty to be so arrogant. Not only did you snatch my maidservant, you even want to kill me here. This is really an eye-opener for me. Ling people have never used their power to bully others, but when the world bullies me, it is unforgivable. Ling Xiao's tone was calm, but the words he said made the Black Tortoise divine dynasty's experts' faces turn ugly, and they felt guilty. The young master's righteousness was known throughout the world. Now, he came here to slay the sky demon, but he was repeatedly humiliated by the Black Tortoise divine dynasty's experts. Not to mention the Ling people's young master, anyone with a backbone would not be able to swallow this resentment. Young master, my Black Tortoise divine dynasty is willing to offer 100 spiritual treasures and 10 cultivation techniques in hopes of appeasing young master's anger. The Black Tortoise ancestor's real name was Wu Chong. He was the only expert among the 4 dynasties who could contend against Yen Luopa. However, when facing the young master of the Ling people, there was no trace of arrogance on his face. Compared to the Yen Dragon Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon's vassal hiding in the dark, the young master in front of him was the truly terrifying existence. I've said it before. Submit or die. Ling Xiao shook his head slightly, his expression cold. 100 spiritual treasures? 10 cultivation techniques? Ancestor, your dynasty is gone. Ancestor, why don't we submit? With young master here, the Yen Dragon Divine Dynasty won't dare to act rashly. The Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty was facing a situation where they had a slim chance of survival. Even if Ling Xiao wasn't here, Jin Yuyang alone was enough to make them suffer heavy losses. So, what could they use to contend against the Yen Dragon Divine Dynasty? This Wu Chang's mind raced, especially when he saw Jin Yuyang's respect for Ling Xiao and her inexplicable breakthrough in her cultivation. His eyes flashed with a strange light. Then, he gently nodded and descended from the sky, standing in front of Ling Xiao. The Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty is willing to be a vassal of the Ling people. Old ancestor, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. What I'm saying is that you'll be my servant, not my subordinate. Ling Xiao smiled warmly, but it caused Wu Chong to be stunned. His lips trembled slightly, but he didn't know what to say. Rejecting him now was no different from courting death. However, as a heavenly sovereign, he had been reduced to a servant. It was simply a great humiliation. Wu Chong, submitting to the young master might be a turning point for your immortal path. Jin Yuyang said indifferently, but the meaning behind her words was obvious. At this moment, she was basically telling this black tortoise ancestor that her breakthrough was due to the young master's grace. Good. Wu Chong is willing to submit to young master. In the end, the black tortoise ancestor nodded silently. Sure enough, some people were born to be above everyone else. And some people, no matter how hard they tried, still couldn't escape the evil thoughts of the world. The great Tao is just. What a joke. Open your soul, see. Don't resist. Ling Xiao used his divine soul to send a message. There seemed to be tens of thousands of soul runes in his eyes that instantly sank into Wu Zhong's soul sea. Accompanied by a buzzing sound, Wu Chang's face suddenly showed a look of confusion. Then, he felt an inexplicable divine power controlling his mind. Emperor! Ancestor! Not good! Suddenly, a cry of alarm came from the void in the distance. A figure in battle armor flew over from the horizon. His body was covered in blood, and his aura was extremely weak. The Black Tortoise Emperor's heart thumped. With a face of shock and anger, he said, "What happened? Emperor!" A demon barged into my Black Tortoise Emperor palace, broke the seal, and took away that divine item. What? The Black Tortoise Emperor's face turned pale. He turned to look at Wu Chong with a fearful expression. Ancestor, what happened? Ling Xiao frowned slightly. His expression was solemn. Young master, a demon broke the seal of my Black Tortoise Emperor palace and took away that evil item while we were here. Wu Chong sighed softly. He already had a guess in his heart. Most likely, the rumors that were circulating in the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace these few days were spread by someone on purpose. Their goal was to lure everyone to attack the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace and get a chance to snatch the treasure. At that time, the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace and the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace would both be injured, and they would be able to reap the benefits. What a vicious plan! However, the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace had no choice but to send out all the Flame Dragon Emperor Palace's experts. Evil item? Tell me the ins and outs of the matter in detail. Yes. Young master, it's like this. Wu Chong did not dare to hide anything. He told Ling Xiao everything that had happened in the Spirit God realm these few days. I see. No wonder the Spirit God realm is listed as the Azure Sky Forbidden Land. I didn't expect the 4 clans to shoulder such a heavy responsibility. Ling Xiao nodded. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed. Oh no. They used this method to plot against the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace and the Black Tortoise Emperor Palace. I'm afraid there's something fishy about the death of the Flame Dragon Crown Prince. The Flame Dragon Divine Dynasty is in danger. Chapter 1098. What? Young Lord is saying. Wu Chang's face tightened as panic flickered in his eyes. At this moment, he finally realized that from the beginning to the end, he had underestimated the 4 words Heavenly Demon Vassal. That's right, since those fiends could deceive the Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty, Yen Luopa and the others must have fallen for the same trick. In that case, the Flame Dragon Emperor Palace, quick! Send people to the Flame Dragon Emperor City to investigate. It's too late. The most important thing now is to protect the two seals in the Golden Crow Divine Dynasty and Ancient Qilin Divine Dynasty. Since the evil treasure is divided into 4 parts, even if the Sky Demon obtains 2 of them, it won't be of much use. Ling Xiao sighed softly and turned to look at the void in the distance. There's no time to lose. Ancestor Wu Chong, you will lead the Black Tortoise Realm experts to guard the Golden Crow Imperial Palace. Ancestor Jin Yuyang and I will rush to the Ancient Qilin Divine Dynasty. Hopefully we can stop this disaster. But Wu Chong wanted to say something but hesitated. The Black Tortoise Imperial City was in a terrible situation. For this expedition, he had brought almost all the Black Tortoise Realm experts with him. In other words, any true Saint Realm expert was an invincible existence in the Black Tortoise Imperial City. The seal is a serious matter. I hope everyone in the Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty can put aside their personal feelings and prioritize the world. Ling Zhao's tone was indifferent, but there was an inexplicable sense of righteousness in it. Young Lord, don't worry. We know what's important and what's not. The Black Tortoise Realm experts nodded in agreement. Ling Xiao turned to the messenger and asked, "What's the cultivation of those fiends?" "True Saint Realm, 2nd or 3rd grade True Saint Realm. In that case, Black Tortoise Emperor can return to the Black Tortoise Imperial City to investigate. If you find anything, report it immediately. There's no time to lose, Ancestor Yang. Young Lord, don't worry. I will definitely assist Young Lord in stopping the Sky Demon's plan." Jin Yuyang took a step forward, and a pair of flaming wings appeared behind her. Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. He kept Wu Kuei into his realm and stood on the profound heavenly ancient ship. Beside him, both Xianyuan Weiyang and Yao Guang wore serious expressions. The Sky Demon's sinister nature was evident today. Fortunately, Qing Tsang had young Master Ling Xiao, who was not afraid of the demonic forces and cared about the common people. "Let's go. Ancient Qilin Divine Dynasty." Following Ling Zhao's shout, countless ripples appeared in the void within a radius of 10,000 miles. The black battle intent tore through the sky and destroyed the blue dome of heaven. The heavenly profound ancient ship turned into a stream of light and shot into the distance. In front of the Golden Crow Imperial Palace, Jean Hainer frowned slightly. Especially when she saw Yao Guang and Xianyuan Weiyang standing beside Ling Xiao, her eyes darkened. "Young Master, I heard that the devil had appeared in the void domain and fought with you. With your strength." Xianyuan Weiyang looked at Ling Xiao curiously, only to see him shake his head slightly with a serious expression. "This demon has an armor on his body, which can be called evil. With my current strength, I might not be his opponent, but with the help of the Arhat, I might be able to put up a fight. After all, the Buddha's path has a suppressive effect on the demonic nature. Ba. If the Sky Demon appears, I will do my best to help young Master kill him." Yao Guang's expression didn't change as he chanted Buddha's name. Xianyuan Weiyang nodded seriously. "Young Master, don't worry. Weiyang will also do my best to help young Master." "Haha, if that's the case, the Sky Demon should be killed." Ling Xiao smiled faintly. His eyes were deep and there was a hint of purple in them. Just now, he had received the message from overlapping shadows that he had obtained the Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty's Netherworld Plate Fragment and Divine Blood. Ling Zhao's main body was already outside the Fire Dragon Emperor Palace. He could meet up with Chen Qingshan at any time and put the blame of this shocking conspiracy on the gone Heavenly Divine Sect. Now, it seemed like this game of chess was coming to an end. Next, he should prepare to harvest the Holy Infant of the gone Heavenly Divine Sect. There must be a shocking secret hidden in the Extreme Een Netherworld Plate, and it seemed like this secret was related to the Holy Infant. At the same time, in the realm, Ling Zhao's main body descended from the sky. Beside him, the chaotic divine body presented the reincarnation devil blade with both hands and disappeared. "Young master, where did you get this idiot?" Phoenix Rouge stepped out from the Sky Hall and looked at Wu Kuei, who was slowly crawling on the ground. "Find a few disciples of the Herb Hall and feed him some spiritual pills every day to forcibly raise his cultivation to the Supreme Being level," Ling Xiao said indifferently. This Wu Kuei's talent was extraordinary, and his body was filled with luck. Once he stepped into the Supreme Being level, his physical defense would be extremely terrifying. At that time, he would be refined into a spiritual treasure, which would be of a high grade. "Alright, Rouge, how is the armor that I asked you to refine?" "Young master, look." Feng Rouge smiled slyly. She waved her hand and took out a strange armor from her universe ring. It was 90% similar to the one on Qin Chen's body. Furthermore, in the center of the armor, there was a blood-red pearl inlaid. It looked exactly like an eye. "Young master, this pearl is a blood spiritual pearl. You only need to use your spiritual energy to light it up." "Not bad." Ling Xiao reached out to take the armor and sized it up. The corners of his mouth immediately curled up into a smile. When Qin Chen appeared in the ancient city of Rocky Cliffs, he used this armor to kill countless disciples of the clan and severely injure Ling Xiao. It could be said that this demonic armor was the symbol of the Sky Demon. It had been more than a month since the end of the Supreme Secret Realm, but there were different opinions about the whereabouts of the Sky Demon, Qin Chen. But, since he was the scapegoat, Ling Xiao would not let Qin Chen disappear completely. He would appear from time to provoke more justice and destiny to appear and kill the demon. After all, the 4 dynasties were hell on earth, especially the ancient Qilin dynasty. Whether it was the ordinary people or the ancient Qilin clan, they were now at the end of the road. Yes, this chaotic world was led by the Sky Demon. But it was the Sky Demon who killed people. What did it have to do with Ling Xiao? Of course, we have to appear at the most critical time to kill the demon and protect the justice of the world. As a transmigrator, Phoenix Rouge's thoughts and methods were incomparable to those of this world. From the first time he saw her, Ling Xiao knew that this girl was clever and skillful. She would be a great help to him on his path to immortality. At the very least, this Fu Sang battlesuit looked like it was made. "Young master, when will you take me out for a walk? I'm about to die of boredom." Phoenix Rouge pouted her red lips and looked resentful. "In a few days, I'll take you to see the demons of the Azure World." Ling Xiao smiled gently and reached out to pinch Phoenix Rouge's pretty face. Then, he disappeared. With Phoenix Rouge's scheming mind, Ling Xiao had already thought of a place for her to go. Calculating the time, Jade Hanyan and the others had been gone for several months. They might have found many people who had ascended from the lower world. When they returned, Ling Xiao would start to create a force that truly belonged to him. Buzz. Ancient Qilin Imperial City, 100 miles away from auspicious Light City. Chen Qingshan and a group of Sky Gone disciples stood in the mountains and looked at the spiritual power fluctuations above the imperial city from afar. Their eyes were filled with fear. When heavenly sovereigns fought, even a wisp of power could destroy the world. Moreover, the powerhouses of the Flame Dragon Dynasty and Ancient Qilin Dynasty were fighting with their lives. Chapter 1099. Auspicious Light City was in shambles. The ancient Qilin Imperial City was no longer as prosperous as it used to be. The Divine Palace had collapsed, and corpses were everywhere. Even the ancient Qilin clan had suffered heavy casualties. Their blood dyed the mountains and rivers red. "Commander Chen, there are supreme beings fighting here. With our strength, I'm afraid." Some of the heavenly Gone disciples raised their heads to look at the shattered space and swallowed hard. The strongest person in the Gone Sky Divine sect was only the sect master, who was a 3rd-grade sage. The remaining commanders were mostly 1st-grade or 2nd-grade sage. Only this Commander Chen was exceptionally talented and was appreciated by the sect master. At such a young age, he had become a commander with his cultivation base in the exalted realm. Even so, they were still ants in front of supreme beings. If they were not careful, they could be crushed to ashes by the residual power. "What are you panicking for?" Chen Qingshan frowned and shouted coldly. Just as he finished speaking, a ripple suddenly appeared in the void above his head. Then, a figure wrapped in demonic qi descended from the sky and stood in front of everyone. This demonic qi. Everyone was stunned. Chen Qingshan's eyes flashed with respect as he bowed to the demonic figure. "Master! Master!" The Gone Sky disciples were even more shocked when they heard that. The sect master of Gone Sky Divine Sect was using his identity as the Sky Demon's follower to fool the demons in the Azure world into working for him. Only Chen Qingshan knew that they were not worthy. However, to the ordinary disciples, the Gone Sky Divine Sect was a vassal of the Sky Demon. They could even feel that the sect master was just a servant of the Sky Demon. Master? Could it be his? "Greetings, Master." Some of the sharper disciples had already knelt on the ground and bowed sincerely. "Is everyone here?" Ling Xiao turned his head and glanced at Chen Qingshan. At this moment, his appearance had already been concealed by demonic qi, leaving only a pair of deep, black eyes looking down at everyone. "My lord, apart from the few disciples who are in charge of collecting the blood spirits, everyone else is here." Chen Qingshan bowed and said humbly. He was now a first-grade supreme being, which was slightly higher than Yi Qingshan. Even his providence had reached 15,000. It seemed that this son of destiny had encountered another opportunity in just a few days. "Good. Come with me." Ling Xiao nodded. The pure Tao body was less than 300 miles away from auspicious Light City. Once he, the young master of the Ling clan, showed up, this dispute would come to an end. Yes, the fear on the faces of the Gantian disciples had long since dissipated. To them, the word heavenly demon was a symbol of faith. Although Ling Xiao did not reveal his identity, Commander Chen's attitude had already told them a lot. What kind of luck! Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that they would one day be able to fight alongside Lord Heavenly Demon. His death was worth it. Boom! Boom! 10,000 miles of space. A flaming divine dragon tore through the sky and crashed into the ancient Qilin ancestor's chest. In an instant, the second-grade heavenly sovereign was sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and the aura on his body had already withered to the extreme. This battle had already lasted for 3 whole days. In those 3 days, the divine imperial court's grand formation had been completely destroyed. Even the ancient Scale clan's earthly sovereign and 4 saints had been killed in the battle. Their bodies and Tao had disappeared. It seemed that the ancient Qilin divine dynasty was at the end of the road. Yen Luopa, you really don't care about the agreement between the ancestors and betray them. The ancient Qilin ancestor fell to the ground. His eyes were full of anger. Yen Luopa could not stop him if he wanted to escape. However, he still had faith and people behind him. So, he could not escape. The ancient Qilin divine dynasty protected the Sky Demon. You deserve it. The Yen Dragon divine dynasty is just enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Even if I don't kill you, I'm afraid it won't be long before the Realm Lord Palace sends people over and slaughters your entire dynasty. Yen Luopa's voice was calm. Although the spiritual power in his body fluctuated, it did not hurt his foundation. A third-grade heavenly sovereign was one of the most powerful people in the Azure world. Moreover, the flame dragon bloodline was good at conquering. It was difficult for the ancient Qilin ancestor to fight against them. Yen Luopa, you are slandering me. The Realm Lord Palace will definitely uphold justice for me. The ancient Qilin ancestor looked up to the sky and shouted sorrowfully. However, the moment his voice fell, an ancient golden seal suddenly appeared in front of Yen Luopa. The ancient seal was surrounded by 9 flame dragons. As Yen Luapa clenched his hand, the 9 flame dragons opened their eyes and let out deafening dragon roars. This is the Flame Dragon clan's inherited sacred artifact, the 9 Dragons Flame Emperor Seal. At that moment, all the ancient Qilin experts' faces changed. Finally, there was despair in their eyes. This precious treasure had always been where the Flame Dragon Fate Qi resided. It had the power to suppress the dragon vein, and it would not be taken out of the Flame Dragon Emperor Palace easily. They did not expect Yen Luapa to bring this treasure out in order to destroy the ancient Qilin Emperor Palace. Gu Duan, the ancient Qilin Emperor Palace's fate Qi has run out. Accept your fate. Yen Luapa's expression was calm. Divine flames swirled around him and enveloped the dragon seal. Boom! Boom! In an instant, the 9 flame dragon divine shadows broke through the sky and shrouded the entire ancient Qilin imperial city with their sacred aura. Could it be that the heavens really want to destroy the ancient Qilin divine dynasty? The ancient Qilin ancestor sighed softly with sorrow in his eyes. He was already at the end of his rope, and Yen Luapa had yet to show his true trump card. Once the seal fell, the 9 dragons would gather, and the ancient Qilin divine dynasty would cease to exist. How ridiculous! A woman and a bet battle had turned into the cause of today's destruction. Inexplicably, the ancient Qilin ancestor was confused. He had a vague feeling that there was an invisible hand behind all this, silently manipulating everything. Even the Flame Dragon Divine Dynasty was just a pawn in the hands of that person. However, who was so scheming and bold to be able to toy with the 2 divine dynasties in their hands? 9 dragons, World Annihilation Royal Seal. Just as the ancient Qilin Emperor was muttering to himself, an angry roar came from the void above him. Immediately after, a sea of fire fell from the sky like an ancient calamity fire. Wherever it passed, the heavenly way was obliterated. Ancient Qilin clan. Follow me. The ancient Qilin ancestor cried out sadly. No matter how doubtful he was, he had no way to verify it. This seal was the beginning of the destruction of the ancient Qilin divine dynasty. Young Emperor, are we really going to watch the ancient Qilin divine dynasty be destroyed? Thousands of miles away, 2 figures were hiding in the clouds. They concealed their auras and looked coldly at the dispute below. With the immortal demon Ancient Bell, even a grade 9 heavenly sovereign would find it difficult to detect the aura of the snow tidal rock, let alone 2 grade 2 and grade 2 heavenly sovereigns. Young Emperor, do you really think that the ancient Qilin divine dynasty is colluding with the Sky Demon? Lu Xinghe frowned slightly. He and the young Emperor had been waiting here for 2 days, but they had not seen any trace of the Sky Demon. Could it be that the Flame Dragon ancestor wanted to use this as an excuse to destroy the 3 dynasties and unify the spirit god realm? Chapter 1100. Old Xing, do you think that if the ancient Qilin divine dynasty really colluded with the Sky Demon would show himself? Xue Xiyan's eyes were deep, and his skin was as white as snow. At this moment, there was not the slightest ripple on his face. It was as if the ancient Qilin divine dynasty's destruction had nothing to do with him. The Sky Demon is sinister and cunning. He probably won't care about their lives. Lu Xinghe pondered for a moment and shook his head. That's right. I think so too. Then, why are you here, young lord? Regardless of whether the ancient Qilin divine dynasty colluded with the Sky Demon, since there are traces of demons here, I'm afraid they're here for the evil treasure sealed by the 4 dynasties. Xue Xiyan turned his head, and a bright smile bloomed on his face. His teeth were white and his eyes were bright. If it weren't for his flat chest, no one would have doubted that he was a girl just by looking at his face. In fact, compared to the number 1 beauty in the Azure world, Gu Chaoxiai, Xue Xiyan's face was even more handsome. He had a domineering aura that looked down on the world and controlled everything. Young lord, you mean? This battle has come to an end. Usually, there will be changes at this time. Xue Shiyan smiled faintly. However, his eyes suddenly turned cold, and he turned his head to look into the distance. At this moment, he could sense that there seemed to be a strand of vast battle intent pressing down on the heavens and the earth from 100 kilometers away. Buzz! A sea of fire surged in the ancient Qilin imperial palace. 9 dragons fell together, covering the sky and the sun. Their power was truly terrifying. The ancient Qilin ancestor's eyes trembled, and the spiritual light around him fluctuated. However, under the sovereign seal, he seemed a little weak. Buzz! But, just as he was about to fight with his life on the line, a strange buzzing sound came from the void above his head. Immediately after, a pair of flaming wings that stretched for hundreds of meters spread out horizontally and blocked the 9 dragons. However, both attacks were condensed from flames, so there was no difference between them from afar. At this time, everyone could only see that the entire imperial palace had turned into a divine sun, comparable to hell on earth. Now is the time. In the depths of the imperial palace, Ling Xiao calmly glanced at the distant sky, then turned to look at the towering ancient hall before him. Ancient runes intertwined and formed a seal, containing a strand of divine intent. This was the place where the ancient Qilin Holy Dynasty had sealed the Netherworld plate. If it was in the past, such a forbidden area would definitely be guarded by experts. However, it just so happened that the ancient Qilin Divine Dynasty was about to be destroyed, so all the experts with some strength had already fallen into a chaotic battle. Moreover, the ancient palace's seal could only be broken by the ancient Qilin Emperor bloodline. In the eyes of Gu Duan and the others, there was no need to worry. I can sense that the treasure is in this palace. Ling Zhao's indifferent words caused the sky-gone disciples' expressions to brighten. Although they didn't know what kind of secret technique their master had used to bring them here, they still didn't know. However, the chaotic battle between the 2 dynasties was a great opportunity for them to seize the treasures. Heavenly good fortune. This was a heaven-defying fortune. I wonder if His Majesty will honor his promise to let us leave our names in the underworld? My lord, this seal. Chen Qingshan frowned slightly and his eyes were slightly solemn. Even he didn't know that Ling Xiao wasn't here for the evil treasure in the palace. Instead, he was here to draw the world's attention to the sky demon, Qin Chen, and the sky-gone divine sect. Fortunately, Prince Gu Yu is a righteous man and has submitted to me. This seal can be broken with a wave of his hand. Ling Xiao said indifferently. With a thought, Gu Yu's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. His eyes were filled with confusion. Then, before the second prince of Gu Lin could react, he felt his neck tighten and his entire body was thrown out by a terrifying force. He slammed hard on the totem in the middle of the ancient palace. Pucci. As expected, with the strength of Gu Yu's body, it was impossible for him to be compared to Ling Xiao. Therefore, the moment his body collided with the stone door of the ancient palace, it instantly shattered and the blood energy in his body was devoured by the seal. Gulp. The scene of the apprenticeship caused a stunned expression to appear on the faces of all the heavenly gone disciples. This is the so-called can be broken with a wave of his hand? Oh, it seems like it can be broken with a wave of his hand. With a wave of His Majesty's hand, Gu Yu broke. Boom. A dazzling golden light quietly bloomed. However, under the cover of the waves of fire, no one noticed the commotion. Except for Xue Shiyan. Young lord. Look. Lu Xinghe's eyes trembled. Especially when he saw the demonic figure in the depths of the palace, a look of reverence appeared on his face. This was the reason why he took the initiative to submit to Xue Shiyan. No matter when, this young lord always seemed to be able to see further. Even compared to the many Supreme Being experts in the Realm Lord Palace, Xue Shiyan's temperament was monstrous. But, just as Xue Shiyan nodded indifferently and was about to take a step forward, he saw a peerless black-clothed figure quietly appear above the ancient palace. Immediately, a cold shout resounded through the entire world. The sky demon is indeed here. Buzz! At the same time, above the void, Yen Luapa looked at the graceful figure that gradually revealed her figure with a shocked expression. His eyes were filled with disbelief. At this moment, he seemed to have seen a golden flaming bird soar into the sky and block the 9 dragons, turning them into nothingness together. Yen Luapa, stop. You have all been used by someone. Jin Yuyang stood in the void, her feather robe blooming with divine light. Even her face seemed to have become a lot younger. She had quite a bit of charm. Jin Yuyang? You? Sky Demon, where do you think you're going? Before everyone could react from their shock, a fierce shout suddenly came from the depths of the palace. A loud and clear sword hum suddenly resounded, and an extremely piercingly cold aura spread out in all directions for thousands of miles in the world. Amitba. Then, another Buddhist hymn was heard, and layers of Buddha shadows appeared in the world. Amidst the divine light, a white-haired female monk stepped through the air. Behind her, tens of thousands of Buddhas followed, golden light like lightning. Boundless Dharma. In another place, an endless sea of blood surged with saintly might. Among them, a young girl with black hair like a waterfall and a peerless beauty had a serious look in her eyes, faintly tinged with nervousness. She stretched out her hand, and a boundless sea of blood fell from the sky, sealing the world and suppressing the world. Let's go. Ling Zhao's eyes were cold, and demonic will surged around him. Immediately, a blood-red eye appeared on the Fu Sang divine armor, blooming with scarlet light. Clang! 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 9 bell chimes reverberated in the void for thousands of miles. Xue Xian frowned slightly as he looked down at the 3 figures that had surrounded the heavenly demon. There was an extremely complicated look in his eyes. Ling Xiao, the Bodhisattva, and Xianyuan princess. All 3 of them, no matter which one it was, were the true righteous in the eyes of the human race. However, the timing of their appearance, wasn't it too much of a coincidence? Or rather, every time the sky demon appeared, why would the successor of the Ling people appear on time? Chapter 1101. Let's go. Demonic will gushed out of Ling Zhao's body, forming a 100-foot-tall demonic shadow that blocked the attacks of Yaoguang, Xianyuan Weiyang, and the pure Dao body. Pfft. However, even with his strength, he still trembled in the face of the 3 top geniuses of the human race. He spat out blood and retreated. Then, before anyone could react, he had already grabbed Chen Qingshan's shoulder and was about to flee into the distance. Clang! At that moment, the sound of a bell suddenly rang in the sky above. Tens of thousands of meters of golden radiance rained down, transforming into countless phenomena that attempted to seal the heavens and earth. At the critical moment, a ray of light lit up in Ling Zhao's hand, and he threw a divine talisman across the sky. Boom! The talisman shattered, erupting with a terrifying might. It directly tore open a crack in space. With a thought, Ling Xiao hid with Chen Qingshan in his realm. Oh no! Master has run away! Run! Seeing this scene, the gone sky disciples immediately cried out in grief and scattered like birds and beasts. Damn it! He got away again! Weiyang, Arhat, capture him! The pure Dao body shouted angrily and took the lead, rushing toward one of the exalted realm disciples. Boom boom! Mighty spiritual might once again filled the air. However, with the strength of these sky-gone disciples, how could they possibly be a match for the Nirmala body and Yao Guang? Therefore, in just 10 breaths, more than half of the disciples who came with Chen Qingshan were dead or injured. The remaining few were all captured by Yao Guang and Xianyuan Weiyang. Since young Master Xue is here, why don't you show yourself? Ling Zhao's Dao body looked up at the sky with a serious expression. Even his body seemed to be surrounded by a wisp of dense purple qi. He was otherworldly and indifferent. He had expected that the turmoil in the four dynasties would attract some azure righteous path cultivators, so he put in a lot of effort to set up today's chess game. Who would have thought that it would be the snow-tide crag this time? Moreover, judging from his actions earlier, it seemed like he already knew that the fight between the Flame Dragon and Gu Lin was merely a game of chess. That talisman was a 7th-grade talisman that Ling Xiao had spent 70,000 villain points to exchange from the system. It was a treasure. If it weren't for the terrifying power of the immortal devil ancient bell, Ling Xiao wouldn't have used it so easily. Young Master Ling, suddenly, a cold shout came from above the clouds. Strands of golden light bloomed and sprinkled down. It was gorgeous and mystical. Xue Xian stood proudly at the peak of the sky. Xianyuan Weiyang stared blankly at that indifferent and cold face. He turned to look at Ling Xiao with some confusion. Young Master, this young Master Xue is so beautiful. How have you been, young Emperor? Ling Xiao's tone was indifferent. Xue Xian's figure descended from the sky and stood in front of Ling Xiao. However, the divine light in his eyes made people feel inexplicably uneasy. Master Ling Xiao, what a coincidence! Xue Xian's words clearly had a deeper meaning. This was the third time. Whenever the Sky Demon appeared, this young master of the Ling people would definitely be present. In the eyes of the world, Ling Xiao, the young master of the Ling people, was righteous and had spared no effort to kill the Sky Demon. Moreover, he had indeed done so. However, Xue Xian just felt that something was wrong. Young Master Xue, you're wrong. It should be said that fate brought us together. Ling Xiao's face suddenly bloomed with a smile. It was obviously gentle but chilling. Jin Yuyang, if you don't give me an explanation today, I'll destroy the Golden Crow dynasty. A fierce shout suddenly came from the palace in the distance. At that moment, Yen Luopa's face was dark, and there seemed to be flames in his eyes. The attack just now was enough to suppress all the elites of the ancient Qilin lineage. The Yen Dragon Divine Dynasty was only one step away from dominating the Spirit God realm. However, this Jin Yuyang didn't know what was good for her and dared to stand in his way. Wait! Her cultivation level, Yen Luopa narrowed his eyes and frowned. At that moment, he seemed to feel that Jin Yuyang's body was emitting a fluctuation that made his heart palpitate. How could it be? According to reliable sources, this Golden Crow patriarch did not have much time left and was at the end of his path. A breakthrough before death? That was ridiculous. The last person who said that is still kneeling in my Golden Crow Arch City. Jin Yuyang sneered, as if she didn't care about Yen Luopa at all. If it had been a month ago, she wouldn't have dared to offend even the emperors of the four dynasties, let alone Yen Luopa. But now, with Lord Ling Xiao's support, what did she have to fear from a small Yen Dragon Divine Dynasty? Thank you, Taoist Yuyang. The ancient Qilin patriarch bowed slightly, a hint of surprise in his eyes. Although the ancient Qilin Divine Dynasty had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, they didn't have a deep relationship with the Golden Crows. Why would Jin Yuyang suddenly appear and stop the Yen Dragon Patriarch's strongest attack? If you want to thank someone, you have to thank my young master. Jin Yuyang shook her head and smiled, her bright golden eyes looking into the depths of the palace. There, two figures, one black and one white, walked over side by side. Behind them, Yao Guang and Xianyuan Weiyang each descended from the sky with a few gone sky disciples in their hands. This is young Master Xue? Yen Luopa and Gu Duan were stunned, and a hint of surprise flashed in their eyes. It could be said that no one in the entire Qing Tsang didn't know this young lord of the Realm Lord Palace. When the Realm Lord went missing, it was Xue Xian who used the immortal demon Ancient Bell to suppress the traitors and stabilize the situation in the Azure Continent. But who was that young man beside him? How many people in the Azure Continent were qualified to stand side by side with Xue Xian? Except his hair was tied up in black, and his immortal face was peerless. Young master of the Ling people? In an instant, Yen Luapa, Gu Lin, and the others turned pale, and an inexplicable fear filled their hearts. Either one of them had the strength and background to crush Qing Tsang's generation. Now that they had appeared together in the spirit god realm, they didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. Young Master Shui, Young Master Ling, why have you come to the spirit god realm personally? Yen Luapa looked uneasy. Even though he was a heavenly supreme, he was still not worth mentioning in front of the Ling people and the Realm Lord Palace. The Sky Demon has appeared, and young Master Shui and I are here to slay it. Ling Zhao's expression was cold as he waved his hand and threw the few gone Sky disciples in front of everyone. Young Master, the second prince of the Gu Lin divine dynasty colluded with the Sky Demon and killed our crown prince. You must seek justice for the Yen Dragon clan. Yen Luapa cried out in grief, looking very miserable. The Realm Lord had decreed that the 4 dynasties were not to conquer and to guard against evil beings. Now that the Yen Dragon divine dynasty had openly disobeyed the decree, if the Realm Lord Palace wanted to punish them, they would be wiped out overnight. Yen Dragon ancestor, you, Sai, have all been fooled by the Sky Demon. Ling Xiao sighed softly, as if it was a pity. Previously, the Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty was instigated by the Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty and the Golden Crow Divine Dynasty to conquer, and then seized the opportunity to seize the evil beings suppressed by the Black Tortoise Divine Dynasty. I think the Yen Dragon Imperial Palace is probably already. What? Impossible. Our Imperial Palace has a great protective array. Yen Luapa was stunned. He suddenly raised his hand and took out a voice transmission talisman from his spatial ring. Huang Guan. Old ancestor? A weak female voice suddenly came from the other end of the talisman, followed by heart-wrenching cries. Old ancestor. The Emperor Lord was killed, and all the experts of the Yen Dragon bloodline were slaughtered. Now the Imperial Palace only has women and children left. Chapter 1102. What? Yen Luapa's face turned pale, and his body trembled violently. How is this possible? My Imperial Palace is protected by the Imperial Guardian Array. Even a heavenly sovereign. Patriarch. Someone betrayed the Flame Dragon clan. Damn it! Yen Luapa roared at the sky, his eyes filled with killing intent. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined that this grand plan to unify the 4 dynasties would actually end with his Flame Dragon bloodline being annihilated. With Shui Xian and Ling Xiao here, it was impossible for him to control the ancient Qilin divine dynasty. So, in the end his dynasty was destroyed, the seal was broken, and he didn't get any other benefits? I can't explain the details in a few words. You should see for yourselves. Ling Xiao sighed softly and raised his head to look at the sky. He seemed depressed and sorrowful, as if he had the will but was powerless to do so. Come here. Yen Luapa gritted his teeth and grabbed a gone Sky disciple who had wet his pants on the ground. His divine soul rippled and shrouded the disciple's soul sea. The ancient Qilin patriarch and Shui Xian hesitated for a moment, but in the end, they didn't care about anything else and searched the divine soul of a gone Sky disciple. Although this method was extremely cruel, ordinary people from the righteous Tao rarely searched people's soul sea openly. However, these people in blood-red robes all had a trace of nefarious aura on them. Evil Dao people didn't care about morality and fairness. Buzz. Along with a buzzing sound, Yen Luapa, Shui Xian, and the others were shocked. Especially Yen Luapa, who stood in place with a blank face. His originally old face had a hint of lethargy. How is this possible? Sky Demon. What a vicious scheme. Gu Yu. He really colluded with the Sky Demon. Gu Duan's face was pale, and he looked at Shui Xian and Ling Xiao in fear. Young Lord, please understand. Gu Yu colluding with the Sky Demon has nothing to do with the ancient Qilin divine dynasty. Nothing to do with it? Didn't you see that it was Gu Yu who led the Gone Sky Divine sect into my Flame Dragon Emperor Palace? Gu Duan, today I will annihilate your Gu Lin lineage and avenge my people. The Flame Luo Po's eyes were bloodshot as spirit light surged around him, wanting to lunge towards Gu Duan. Stop! Ling Xiao frowned slightly and glanced coldly at Yen Luopa. Now that Gu Yu is dead, the four dynasties are in a precarious situation. If we continue to fight amongst ourselves, we will only be digging our own graves. Young lord, what do you mean? Could it be that you want me, Flame Dragon, to let go of this grudge? Gu Yu was killed by the Sky Demon. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. Perhaps he was used by someone, but this was indeed the negligence of the ancient Qilin clan. Therefore, young Lord Xue should decide how to deal with it. Before Ling Xiao could finish his words, Yen Luopa's eyes widened. He shook his head and sighed. Of course, since the Sky Demon wants the evil treasures sealed by the four dynasties, and he has already obtained 2, I think he will not let go of the remaining 2. The Black Tortoise clan has listened to my suggestion and submitted to the Golden Crow clan to guard the Golden Crow seal together. Now that the Flame Dragon and ancient Qilin dynasties have suffered heavy losses, I am afraid that if the Sky Demon comes again, your 2 clans will be completely annihilated. The ancient Qilin ancestor's eyes trembled slightly. He saw Jin Yuyang standing quietly behind Ling Xiao, looking extremely respectful. He immediately had a guess in his heart. With the ancient Qilin divine dynasty's current foundation, not to mention the Sky Demon, even a heavenly sovereign would be able to slaughter them all. This seal was no longer something that they could protect. Moreover, although Master Ling Xiao trusted him, Gu Yu was the prince of the ancient Qilin dynasty, and he was related to the Sky Demon. If he seized the seal now, it would inevitably arouse suspicion and jealousy. If so, why not throw this hot potato out? Young lord. Suddenly, the ancient Qilin ancestor took a step forward and bowed respectfully to Ling Xiao. Ancestor, what are you doing? You are a senior in the path of immortality. How is Ling Xiao worthy of you bowing down? You are flattering me. Ling Xiao hurriedly took 2 steps forward and helped the ancient Qilin ancestor up. It was obvious that this ancestor was sensible and was prepared to take the initiative to hand over the seal. In front of the threat of annihilation, the creation's spiritual treasure and the promise of faith were not worth mentioning. This evil treasure fragment was useless to the 4 dynasties. If it attracted the attention of the Sky Demon, it would be a great disaster. Young lord, I heard that the young lord is righteous. Now that the ancient Qilin dynasty is unable to protect the seal, I hope that the young lord can be magnanimous and help us seal this treasure. The ancient Qilin ancestor's expression was respectful. Especially when he saw how humble Ling Xiao was, it made him sigh inexplicably. Compared to Xuexian, who was the young lord of the Realm Lord Palace, Ling Xiao was undoubtedly gentler and more approachable. This is not appropriate, right? Ling Xiao frowned and seemed to hesitate. Young lord, this is a great plan for the common people. If the Sky Demon obtains this item, I'm afraid the entire Azure continent will fall into eternal damnation. Only with the Ling clan's protection will it be absolutely safe. The ancient Qilin ancestor's meaning was clear. The Realm Lord was missing, and the Realm Lord Palace was no longer a threat. The Taigu Ling people had a deep foundation and were feared by the entire Azure continent. Moreover, the 2 fragments of the evil treasure had been taken away by the Sky Demon. Even if Ling Xiao was greedy, he would not be able to complete this treasure. Unless this Tao heart that was recognized by the Azure continent as the light of righteousness had fallen and colluded with the Sky Demon. Even so, the Golden Crow Holy Dynasty was still suppressing an evil treasure. With the protection of the 4 dynasties, there should not be any more changes. Ling Xiao sighed softly. Since this item is so important, I have a suggestion. Young Lord Xue, the Ling people have been living in seclusion and do not send out experts. However, the Realm Lord Palace is in charge of the Azure continent and has the responsibility to protect the common people. I hope that young Lord Shui can send some experts to Golden Crow City to guard the other evil treasure. Then, I will bring the ancient Qilin dynasty back to seal the Ling people. Hearing this, everyone was stunned and looked at Shui Xian. Master Ling Xiao, you are indeed the great light of Azure continent. With such a magnanimous heart, the human race will prosper. Everyone knew that the Realm Lord Palace and the Taigu Ling people had always been at odds. However, in the face of such a major issue, Master Ling Xiao could actually put down the prejudice in his heart and guard the evil treasure together with the Realm Lord Palace to fight against the Sky Demon. This was a righteous action. Alright. Shui Xian frowned slightly. Although he had seen the cause of this disaster in the spirit sea of the Gone Sky disciple just now. However, for some reason, he vaguely felt that there was something suspicious behind all this. Flame Dragon Patriarch, now that the world is in chaos, young Lord Shui and I still hope that you can put down the grudge in your heart and contribute to the Sky Demon's slaying plan. Ling Xiao said indifferently, not hiding the deep meaning in his words. Yes. In the end, in front of the two immortal forces, the Taigu Ling people and the Realm Lord Palace, Yen Luopa chose to endure and submit. The Flame Dragon lineage's foundation was completely destroyed. However, as long as he was still alive, the Flame Dragon race still had hope. Back then, the reason why Ling Xiao did not exterminate the Flame Dragon race was to leave a trace of hope for this heavenly sovereign. Otherwise, when the bloodline was destroyed, he would truly have no scruples. At the very least, the current Yen Luopa still had the desire to revive the Flame Dragon race. Now, it seems that the Gone Sky Divine Sect is most likely a force secretly created by the Sky Demon. Young Lord Shui, there is no time to lose. I will personally lead the Ling people's guards to the Gone Sky Divine Sect and see if we can eradicate this sect. I will leave the Spirit God territory to you, young lord. Ling Xiao looked into the distance with a worried expression. Even his eyes were filled with a touch of vicissitudes of life that moved people. Chapter 1103. Shui Xian nodded with a cold expression. Among the four dynasties, only the Black Tortoise ancestor, Jin Yuyang, and Jin Yen had been implanted by Ling Xiao. Given their identities, the snow-tide rock wouldn't easily probe their seas of soul. Even if he stayed here and secretly investigated the demon's whereabouts, he would not be able to find any loopholes. With this young master's shrewdness, she would not believe what she saw. Only by asking her to stay and verify it herself could she understand the true meaning of young master's righteousness. Young master, please come with me. The ancient Qilin ancestor bowed slightly and led Ling Xiao into the depths of the palace. Ancestor, young master, farewell. Ling Xiao nodded and did not hesitate any longer. He grabbed the remaining Gone Sky disciple and strode toward the sealed area. At this time, the seal outside the ancient palace had been broken. The ancient Qilin ancestor lifted the divine platform that contained the divine blood and handed it to Ling Xiao. Young master, this drop of divine blood can suppress evil. The mission of the ancient Qilin dynasty is in your hands. Ancestor, don't worry. I swear on my Tao heart that as long as I, Ling Xiao, am alive, I will not let this evil item fall into the hands of others. Ling Xiao's tone was serious, but the ancient Qilin ancestor was stunned. At this moment, he seemed to understand why the young master of the Ling clan had a holy name that was not inferior to the sages of the human clan after only being born for a few months. Protecting the evil treasure was the mission of the ancient Qilin race. Now, they had no choice but to entrust it to Ling Xiao. To put it bluntly, even if the young master of the Ling people rejected it, the ancient Qilin ancestor would not be surprised. After all, the Sky Demon was feared by the 9 heavens. Even though it was still young, No one in the entire Azure continent dared to stand up for it and openly oppose it. The people of the world were cowardly and greedy. However, if one had to pay the price of one's life and the legacy of one's clan, throughout history, only one human emperor, Xianyuan, had the guts to do so. Yet now, Ling Xiao was actually willing to gamble with his Dao heart to protect this item. This clearly showed his benevolence and righteousness. It was no wonder that this young man, who was only in his early 20s, was already an opportunity for the revival of the human race. Fearless, righteous, the backbone of the human race. It's a great fortune to have a young master in these troubled times. If the heavens didn't give birth to young master, the human race would be like a long night. The ancient scale ancestor took a deep breath and bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. This bow was not because of his background or talent, but because of the righteousness in his heart. Ancestor, you flatter me. There's no time to lose. I'll track down the demon first. The spirit god realm will be guarded by the few ancestors. Ling Xiao waved his hand and kept the immortal foundation netherworld disk into the Glaze ancient pagoda. He then turned and left. Behind him, Yaoguang and Xianyuan Weiyang were deeply moved. Their bright eyes were trembling. Apparently, they were also in awe of Ling Xiao's actions. Especially Yaoguang. The wariness in his eyes had unknowingly dissipated. Even if he was a demon, he should be a great demon like the ancient demon lord who protected the common people and fought for the heavens with his life. Buzz. In the void, an ancient battleship swept across. Ling Xiao's figure landed at the bow of the battleship. He stood with his hands behind his back. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and his aura was unique. Countless figures in the ancient Qilin imperial palace bowed to Huang Xiaolong and shouted, "Farewell, young lord." Only Xue Xian remained calm and seemed to be pondering. He didn't take the evil treasure, didn't take the credit, and didn't seize the opportunity to control the 4 dynasties. Could it be that I've been worrying too much? Boom. The wind and clouds surged, and spiritual light danced wildly. The 1,000-foot battleship eventually turned into a stream of light and flew towards the intersection of the Shenwu dynasty and the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb. However, just as Ling Xiao and the others were about to leave the Spirit Divine region, a clear shout suddenly came from the distant sky. "Lord Ling Xiao." Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and turned his head. He saw a pair of golden flame wings coming from afar and instantly appearing above everyone's heads. Jean Han was dressed in a feathered robe that was overflowing with divine flames. Her jade-white face was filled with a touch of shyness and anticipation. Is young master leaving the Spirit Divine region? Just now, the forefather had sent her a voice transmission and asked her to come here. His purpose was naturally to catch up with Ling Xiao and travel together with him. Although the Golden Crow Divine Dynasty had submitted to the young master, how could Jean Han be willing to be a servant? Only by standing beside the young master could she have the opportunity to take a step forward and even reach a negative distance. The demonic traces have appeared and a new storm has appeared. How can we cultivators remain stagnant? Ling Xiao frowned slightly. At this time, he was not in a hurry to travel. He still had to wait for the other small team of the Gone Sky Divine Sect to successfully send back the blood spirits collected in the Spirit Divine region. Only then could the Blood Infant activate the Great Array and become his true self. At that time, haha, Holy Infant, you have worked hard. Holy Infant, you are righteous. Holy Infant, you will die. A set of 3, harvested and brought away, and obtained the fortune. As for whether this holy infant would conceal himself and escape from the nest, Ling Xiao guessed that there was an 80% chance that he would not, because he would not know what had happened in the Spirit Divine region. Young master is righteous. Han deeply admires you. I only hope that I can follow young master, bathe in the divine light, cleanse my Tao heart, and contribute to the rise of the human race. Jean Han had a respectful expression as she bowed to Ling Xiao. Since you have this intention, then follow me to search for the demonic traces. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. Compared to Yi Qingchan and the others, this Golden Crow Princess was obviously stronger. Moreover, he needed someone to witness his righteous deeds. With these 3 women of destiny following him, he didn't have to do everything himself. Young master, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Han will definitely not betray young master's trust. Jean Han eyes lit up with joy. She descended from the sky and stood beside Ling Xiao. However, when she saw the coldness on Yao Guang's and Xianyuan Weiyang's faces, she immediately stepped back and stood behind the 2 women. Let's go, Ling Xiao said indifferently. He steered the ancient ship and traveled along the mountain. The location of the Gone Sky Divine Sect was perfect. It was located at the border of the Xunwu dynasty and the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb. No one had ever paid attention to it. Of course, an evil sect whose strongest was not at the Saint Realm could not cause too much trouble. At the same time, in the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb, in front of the Sword Tomb, there was a sudden burst of divine light. An extremely cold aura gushed out and cut off the ancient forest in the mountain. Buzz buzz. Subsequently, another sword howl resounded abruptly, and the 30,000-meter sword insight shattered the sky and shook the hearts of all. The sword master of the Dragon Abyss Sword was shocked. He stretched out his hand and blocked the sword intent. Then, he looked down at the 3 people who were still sitting cross-legged in front of the ancient tablet. Most of the disciples of the Sword Tomb had already awakened from their enlightenment. Only Ling Tian, Xiang Tian, and Jun Mo had not awakened. The sword intent around them intertwined as if they had comprehended an extremely powerful sword force. Could it be that 3 sword immortals will appear in the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb this time? The sword master of the Dragon Abyss Sword was shocked. Among the 3 of them, Xiang Tian's sword force was the most majestic. However, he somehow felt that Ling Tian, who had not moved at all, was the one chosen by the ancient tablet this time, the heavenly mandate inheritance. Chapter 1104. Another day, when the Sword Qi River above the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb gradually dissipated. In front of the ancient tablet, the 3 people opened their eyes at the same time. Boom! The ancient tablet that was originally standing in front of the Sword Tomb suddenly collapsed from the middle and scattered on the ground. The Sword Master's expression turned cold, and the premonition in his heart grew stronger. This time, the Sword Tomb's successor's name would probably shake the 9 heavens. Master! Xiang Tian and the other 2 stood up and looked at each other with smiles on their faces. Unlike the scheming of ordinary sects, the disciples of the Sword Tomb had always been straightforward and regarded the sword as their life. Thus, no matter which senior brother or junior brother had a breakthrough on the path of the sword, they would be congratulated. This was also the reason why the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb did not have many disciples and their inheritance was shallow, but many supreme forces feared them. Not bad. Looks like all of you have gained something. The Sword Master nodded slightly, but he still had doubts in his heart. He asked in a deep voice, Xiang Tian, what did you gain? Master, my sword Dao has reached perfection. Xiang Tian's expression was firm, and there seemed to be sword radiance blooming around him. He was like an unsheathed divine sword, causing people to shudder. Oh Mowu, what about you? Master, I visualized the sword force in the stone tablet and tempered my sword heart. Jun Mowu smiled sweetly. At this moment, her gaze landed on Xiang Tian, and she could actually see the changes in his sword intent and sword force. Once the 2 of them fought, Jun Mowu could use this as a contract to counter each move. The flawless sword heart was originally an extremely rare talent in the path of the sword Dao. Who would have thought that she would use it to observe the divine tablet today? Not bad. What about you? In the end, the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb turned to look at Ling Tian. Compared to Xiang Tian and Jun Mo Wu, he was more curious about what kind of fortune this cold-hearted disciple with a Tao heart between the righteous and the demonic had obtained. The ancient tablet collapsed. Could it be that the person in the sword tomb found a true successor? Replying to Master, disciple saw an inheritance. Just as Ling Tian finished speaking, the sword master's eyes narrowed. Inheritance? That's right. It's called the 3,000 Sword Bones. Boom! Dark clouds suddenly fell from the sky, and wind and thunder roared in the sky. Boundless Taoist rhymes surged forth and intertwined into clouds. Above Ling Tian's head, a celestial figure could be faintly seen. He was dressed in white and had black hair. 3,000 sword bones. The sword master of the Dragon Abyss sword was shocked. Just a strand of aura was able to cause such a phenomenon. One could only imagine how unparalleled Ling Tian would be once he successfully cultivated this bone. Who would have thought that the sword immortal legacy would be obtained by a youth who had just entered the sect? Of course, even if the sword master of the Dragon Abyss sword was extremely curious about such an immortal art, he did not have a trace of greed at this moment. After all, he had already studied this ancient tablet for tens of thousands of years. Although he had occasionally obtained some good fortune from it and comprehended many sword techniques, he still hadn't obtained the recognition of the immortals to be bestowed with a supreme divine art. The immortal path was filled with endless changes. In the end, it was luck that determined the upper limit of this path. Some people were unable to reach this realm even after spending their entire lives. Some people only needed to comprehend it once, and they could ascend. Hard work will make you outstanding, but hard work won't bring you to the top. That's right. Since the three of you have obtained something, then focus on your cultivation and work hard to prove your Tao. The sword master of the Dragon Abyss sword sighed softly. There was a complicated look between his brows. Meanwhile, Ling Tian and the other two bowed and turned to walk down the mountain. Although, at this moment, Ling Tian could feel that there seemed to be an aura calling out to him from the depths of the sword tomb. However, it was said that this sword tomb contained billions of sword intent. Not to mention his current cultivation level, even if a supreme powerhouse entered rashly, their body would be instantly pierced through and their soul would be destroyed. Ling Tian had a vague feeling that he could only open the sword tomb and obtain the final inheritance after he forged the sword bone. Boom! Divine Martial Imperial Realm, Sword Tomb Outskirts. At this moment, above the barren mountain, a bloody aura was surging. There was a faint dark aura that enveloped the sky, concealing all the evil in this place. What? Ling People's young master and the Realm Lord's palace's young master both went to the Spirit God realm? The blood-child Holy Infant's face was gloomy, and there seemed to be a bloody glow in his eyes. Yes, that's what the disciples who returned said. In front of him, Sect Master Gon Tian looked terrified as he bowed and reported. What about the youth who found the underworld plate's whereabouts? Did he come back alive? Holy Infant, he's in the mountain now, and he's also suffered some serious injuries. Tell him to come in. Yes. Sect Master Gon Tian felt as if he had been pardoned, and he jogged out of the cave. Commander Chen, the Holy Infant wants to see you. At this moment, in the forest of the barren mountain, Chen Qingshan and another saint stood quietly, their faces pale. Especially Chen Qingshan, his aura was weak, and there were still traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Yes. Hearing this, Chen Qingshan's eyes narrowed, but he did not hesitate and walked toward the cave at the top of the mountain. Although he had already sensed the Holy Infant's aura, he had never seen his face. Now that his master was on his way, it was obvious that he wanted to destroy this evil sect. As such, he only needed to calm the Holy Infant down, and his master would take care of everything. When Chen Qingshan walked into the cave, He saw the holy infant in blood-red clothes sitting on a stone chair in the cave, a pair of bloody eyes staring coldly at him. "Greetings, holy infant! You're Chen Qingshan? Not bad, you've done a great service by collecting the blood spirit. I'll reward you." The blood child holy infant smiled evilly and sized Chen Qingshan up. However, he frowned when he saw that the young man's nether chi was even denser than his. "I heard that the young master of the Ling people and the young master of the Realm Lord's palace went to the spirit god realm. Did any of my disciples fall into their hands? Don't worry, holy infant. Before I left, the sect master gave me the nether seal. I've already killed those who fell into the hands of others." Chen Qingshan's expression did not change as he replied in a deep voice. That's right, sect master Gon Tian had given him the nether seal to control the lives of his disciples. However, his master wanted them alive, so he had already thrown the nether seal away. Very good. This is the courage that the nether clan should have. I heard from Agon that you're good friends with the second prince of the ancient Qilin divine dynasty. Was he the one who told you about the nether plate? The blood child holy infant smiled in satisfaction, but a cold glint flashed across his eyes. That's right. Since you're so good friends with him, why didn't he steal the nether plate and offer it to me? An evil light suddenly shot out from between the blood child holy infant's eyebrows. An invisible force suddenly descended and enveloped Chen Qingshan. Even though both of them were in the venerable realm, Chen Qingshan still felt a chill in his heart. He almost lost his mind in the nether chi. Holy infant, the second prince of Gu Yu doesn't know that I've joined the demon sect. This time, I found out about the whereabouts of the nether plate by chance. I hope you can investigate. Chen Qingshan gritted his teeth, but a smile appeared on the blood child holy infant's face. The majestic nether chi instantly dissipated, and his figure was already about 10 feet in front of Chen Qingshan. Chapter 1105. I'm joking. You don't have to be so nervous. The blood child holy nascent soul sized Chen Qingshan up. That nether plate is indeed the most precious treasure of the nether tribe, but it's not an offensive treasure. It's a formation that connects the Netherland and the Azure world. A formation? Chen Qingshan frowned. He was surprised. He didn't expect the 4 divine dynasties to seal such an evil thing that connected the human world and the Netherland. Chen Qingshan didn't know what kind of tribe the Nether tribe was. However, since they were sealed by the immortal tribe, they must have a terrifying background and means. Otherwise, with the tyrannical power of the immortal clan, it would not be as simple as sealing him. That's right. However, this nether plate isn't the opportunity for the nether tribe to be reborn. This plate can only enter the Netherland from the Azure world. It can't return from the Netherland. The blood child holy nascent soul smiled. The blood spirit formation is complete now. As long as I use it as a contract and completely merge with the mark of the Nether God, I'll be able to find the entrance to the Nether tribe's seal. Then, I'll just break the seal and our tribe will return to the world. The immortal tribe and the demon tribe will just be stepping stones for us. The mark of the Nether God. Chen Qingshan frowned. At this moment, he felt uneasy. Why would the blood child holy nascent soul suddenly tell him such a secret? After all, Chen Qingshan's cultivation level wasn't the best even in the Gone Sky divine sect. However, although the blood spirit formation is ready, we still need a nether body as a guide. I see that you're quite talented. Why don't you offer the nether body to our tribe and help us conquer the world? What? Chen Qingshan suddenly looked up. His eyes were filled with shock. However, before he could do anything, an evil light suddenly appeared between the blood child holy nascent soul's eyebrows. It turned into a sinister shadow and grabbed at him. Oh no! Chen Qingshan's expression changed. Spiritual light bloomed around him, and he struck out with his palm. Buzz! The void buzzed. layers of nether chi gathered and turned into a divine seal that was 100 feet long. It went up. However, Chen Qingshan was only at the 2nd grade of the Exalted Realm, while the Blood-Child Holy Infant was at the 8th grade of the Exalted Realm and had the mark of Pluto. As a result, the moment the two attacks collided, Chen Qingshan's face suddenly paled. Blood spurted from his mouth as he was directly blown away, falling to the side of the cave. There's no need to resist. You should feel honored to be able to sacrifice yourself for my race. The Blood-Child Holy Infant smiled sinisterly. He did not give Chen Qingshan any time to catch his breath. The nether shadow above his head suddenly stepped out and crushed the young man into the ground with a tremendous force. Ling people's young master and the Realm Lord's palace have discovered the whereabouts of our sect. It's too late. Today, I will activate the 10,000 spirits' blood sacrifice and fuse with the mark of the god of the underworld. I will become the only god of the underworld clan. As soon as he finished speaking, a bloody glow suddenly appeared around the Blood-Child Holy Infant, enveloping the entire cave. In the depths of the cave, a strange sound of rolling waves suddenly resounded. Come, I'll let you see the true power of the Nether race. When my race returns, we can sacrifice all the living beings in this domain. As for me, I will lead the Nether race to go against the gods and slay the immortals, achieving eternal hegemony. The Blood-Child Holy Infant laughed maniacally at the sky. He grabbed Chen Qingshan in his hand and turned to walk into the depths of the cave. There, a sea of blood bobbed up and down. The sun, moon, the universe, and the sea of stars all fell into it. Endless evil images began to appear. Vaguely, Chen Qingshan seemed to see a blood-red evil figure with a ferocious face slowly descend. It stood at the top of the sky and looked down on all living beings, emitting an ancient evil aura. Boom! The entire barren mountain trembled violently. Rocks cracked and ancient trees burned. Even some of the weaker sky-gone disciples were crushed to ashes by this evil aura. Dream Demon raised his head in surprise and looked at the blood-red netherworld radiance surging in the cave. A hint of panic suddenly appeared in his eyes. Chen Qingshan had been summoned by the Holy Infant and had not returned. Now that such an evil image had appeared, the Holy Infant had most likely activated the blood formation and sacrificed all living beings in an attempt to enter the Saint Realm. However, such a commotion would quickly attract many factions. Could it be that the Blood-Child Holy Infant had already thought of a way out and the Sky-Gone Divine sect had already been abandoned? Qingshan. Dream Demon's eyes trembled. She suddenly stepped forward and was about to rush toward the mountain peak. However, before she could get close to the cave, Sect Master Gon Tian descended from the sky and stopped her in her tracks. What do you want? Get lost. Demonic will flowed around Dream Demon, and spiritual light surged. It was as if an ancient demon had suddenly awakened and could not be stopped. Although she had yet to enter the Saint Realm, there was no trace of fear on her face. Chen Qingshan was now all that she had to persevere on her path to immortality. If he really died at the hands of the Holy Infant, to Dream Demon, her Tao heart would shatter and the world would be destroyed. You're courting death. How dare you insult me? See if I don't crush your cough head. As soon as he finished speaking, Sect Master Gon Tian reached out with his hand, and 10,000 streaks of dark chi filled the sky. The void shattered as a sinister palm imprint blasted out, shattering the devilish will around Dream Demon and suppressing him. Boom! Instantly, the mountain peak cracked and the world reversed. Dream Demon looked at the bloody light formation that was gradually solidifying with despair. A trace of blood spilled from the corner of her mouth. Qingshan. Die. Sect Master Gon Tian snorted and stepped forward. However, just as he waved his hand and was about to kill this reckless disciple of the sect, he suddenly saw a black fog rise up in front of him, as if drowsiness had swept over him. In a short moment, many desires appeared in front of him. the admiration of tens of thousands, the glory of the world. At this moment, he seemed to have become the true sect master of the Azure Sky sect. All he could see were his subjects kneeling and his disciples bowing their heads. Not good. It's the dream realm. Sect Master Gontian was stunned. Netherlight swirled in his eyes, but when he looked down again, the girl was nowhere to be seen. On the mountain peak, there was suddenly the sound of wind breaking. Sect Master Gontian turned his head and saw a black-clothed figure flash into the blood formation. Damn it! How dare you disturb the holy infant's cultivation? Before he could finish his sentence, the sky and earth within 1,000 feet of him suddenly darkened. Sect Master Gontian was stunned. He slowly looked up and saw that there were already many figures above him. They were so densely packed that there was no end to them. They were countless demonic figures wearing battle armor and holding divine halberds. Their fighting spirit shook the sky. In front of the tens of thousands of demonic figures, there was a young man in black with his hair tied up. He looked at the blood formation on the mountain peak with a serious expression. Beside him, there were 3 women dressed in different clothes, but all of them were peerlessly beautiful. A wisp of astonishment appeared on the faces of the 3 women. Obviously, they were shocked by the ghastly and vast bloody aura. Chapter 1106. Amitabha. Yaoguang's eyes were cold, and the Buddhist light around him shone brightly. Even with her Buddhist nature, there was a rare murderous look on her face. How many lives did he have to kill to gather such a thick blood energy? Jean Han covered her red lips with her hand and leaned toward Ling Xiao in fear. Young master, it's so scary. Buzz buzz. At this moment, the sound of wind breaking could be heard from afar. One figure after another appeared in the sky, and all of them looked at the sinister blood fog that permeated the mountain peak with a shocked expression. Everyone could feel the resentment of the living beings in the blood mist. Obviously, they had been slaughtered and turned into vengeful spirits. It's the Taigu Ling people's black demon guards. That's Yaoguang's Bodhisattva? And the eldest princess of the Golden Crow Divine Dynasty, Jean Han. That young man is Master Ling Xiao. It's Master Ling Xiao. Could it be that the young master was also attracted by the evil elephant here? I heard that the 4 great divine dynasties had traces of that demon. The young master showed up to slay the demon and took the responsibility of guarding the evil treasure. Then, he went to find the demon. Yes. Someone saw the legendary strange armor. It's the one with the blood eye in the middle. The sky demon, Qin Chen. Could it be that the one hidden in the blood formation is Qin Chen? Boom. Just as everyone was sighing in amazement, Ling Xiao's figure flashed out. Kill. Don't leave a single one alive. A cold and deep voice echoed in the sky. The 10,000 demon guards instantly turned into a black flood and fell from the sky, trapping the gone divine dynasty disciples in the mountain. Boom boom. Spiritual light danced and the killing aura shook the sky. With the strength of the black jade guards, how could a mere motley crew resist them? In fact, even Sect Master Gontian, who had stepped into the saint stage, fell from the sky when the 2 black demon commanders swung their halberds. No one knew if he was dead or alive. At this moment, Ling Xiao ignored the killing behind him and stood with his hands behind his back on top of the blood array. As early as half a day ago, he had already arrived at the periphery of this barren mountain. However, in order to avoid alerting the enemy, he did not move and pretended to look for the demon. Ling Xiao immediately sensed something when the blood formation was activated. He immediately landed on the mountain with the mysterious heavenly ancient battleship. Of course, with Chen Qingshan's luck, Ling Xiao did not believe that he would die so easily. No matter how one looked at it, the blood-child holy infant was a villain. Furthermore, it was a villain related to Chen Qingshan's nether body. Therefore, this ordeal might be an opportunity for Chen Qingshan to grow again. On the other hand, Ling Xiao was surprised that Dream Demon had disregarded life and death to barge into the array. Chen Qingshan was originally the model of love shakes the nine heavens. Now that the Dream Demon had transformed into Gu Xie, it could be said that his Dao heart had been reconstructed. If this Dream Demon were to fall again, Ling Xiao didn't know whether he should sympathize with this little immortal sect disciple or congratulate him for being even more miserable and for being one step closer to becoming the sole ruler of the world. Ah! No! I don't want to be a demon anymore. Sect Master, save me! Oh, Sect Master seems to be gone. The entire barren mountain was instantly filled with screams and cries. Yao Guang and the other two figures descended from the sky and landed in front of Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao turned his head and looked at Yao Guang in surprise. There was a wisp of blood on his white robe. The corners of his mouth immediately curled up into a smile. The law of the world was that there was no end to it. The Brahma Bodhisattva was merciful and did not like killing. However, today, he had broken his vow to kill. Indeed, this group of Gan Tian evil spirits was cruel and merciless. They deserved to be killed. However, what truly changed the Bodhisattva's temperament was not the blood formation that gathered thousands of living beings in front of her. Instead, it was Ling Xiao's subtle influence that made her see the ugliness of human nature. At that time, Yuan Yao was merciful and did not kill or get angry. Ling Xiao had encouraged her and made her firmly believe that everything in the world was beautiful. In this way, she'd personally buried the lives of countless followers by her side and shattered her Dao heart in one go. With this experience, the current Yao Guang would definitely not believe in the beauty of human nature and would be on guard at all times. So, Ling Xiao simply allowed her to experience the true darkness of human nature on the path to immortality. Every man for himself, let alone on the path to immortality that went against the heavens. No matter if it was Xiao Yu's end, the upheaval in the four dynasties, or the blood formation before her eyes, all of it shook Yao Guang's firm belief in being merciful. If evil spirits lay down their butcher's knife, then they can become Buddhas. If people repent, then they should be redeemed. Then, what's the point of me cultivating suffering, overcoming calamities, and walking on the path to Buddhism? I should become a demon and lay down my butcher's knife. As he looked at the dazzling blood-red devil lotus between Yao Guang's brows, the smile on Ling Xiao's face grew even gentler. Her Buddhist nature was fading, and her demonic nature had been born. It probably wouldn't be long before this Bodhisattva of the West Pole completely fell into the demonic path. At that time, he only needed to personally imprint that glazed lotus heart into her chest, and the Bodhisattva would probably become a demon Bodhisattva. The Tao of Karma was indeed the most mysterious of the 3,000 great Taos. This Yao Guang appeared in front of the sky demon again and again, and she was also a demon Buddha. Could it be that she was related to the sky demon in her previous life? Plop! The upheaval in the mountain was completely extinguished when Sect Master Gan Tian's figure was thrown in front of Ling Xiao by the two commanders of the Black Devil Guards. The ancient forest and mountain rocks had long been dyed red with blood, and the thick smell of blood filled the sky. Above the void, many prodigies and experts from the surrounding factions looked at the 10,000 black-armored figures with reverence, as well as the black-clothed peerless young master in front of them. When the demon guards went to war, not even a blade of grass would survive. Such a murderous aura was truly terrifying, and no one dared to look directly at it. Your sect master Gan Tian? Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at the blood-stained sect master Gan Tian. He frowned slightly. Is your master here? Wait until my master merges with the blood essence and divine soul of these tens of thousands of living beings for the blood sacrifice ceremony. He will definitely be unparalleled in the Azure Dome realm and crush all of you beneath his feet. Sect Master Gan Tian snorted coldly and straightened his neck. He was rather unyielding. What? Living beings for the blood sacrifice ceremony? What a cruel method. Looks like Qin Chen is here. Hearing this, everyone instantly exclaimed with a trace of fear in their eyes. The sky demon, Qin Chen, had been able to escape from the young master of the Realm Lord Palace and the young master of the Ling people so many times. He must have an extremely terrifying life-saving trump card on him. Some people even guessed that it was a spatial treasure that could allow him to travel through space at will. That's right. The sky demon's wings were not fully grown yet, and he was still unable to pose a threat to many factions. However, once he grew up, the entire Azure Dome realm would suffer his wrath. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and his gaze gradually turned solemn. Is there a way to break this blood array? A way to break it? I suspect that you're looking down on our master. The blood energy in this blood array was sucked dry while the living beings were still alive, and it gathered all their resentment. Unless the blood sacrifice ceremony ends, even a heavenly sovereign would not be able to, Pucci. Before sect leader Gon Tian could finish speaking, one of his heads suddenly exploded. Chapter 1107. Ling Xiao was taken aback. Even Xianyuan Weiyang and Jin Hon'er looked at Yaoguang, who was chanting Buddha's name, in shock. Their beautiful eyes were filled with shock. Ba! Evil demons should be killed. Yaoguang's eyes were calm, but the red lotus between his eyebrows became brighter and brighter. It was as if it was alive, and there was a demonic aura that was the opposite of Buddha's aura. Black demon guards, listen to my order. Attack with all your might and destroy this array. Ling Xiao sighed and shouted coldly. Buzz. Suddenly, there seemed to be demonic clouds in the sky above the barren mountain. An indescribably terrifying battle aura gathered and turned into a 1,000-foot-long demonic halberd. It crossed the void and smashed down from the sky. The blue sky shattered, and cracks in space stretched for thousands of miles. Demonic light surged, and the heavenly Tao no longer existed. Boom! Finally, the demonic halberd landed on the blood array, and there was a deafening sound of thunder. However, what was terrifying was that at this moment there were suddenly bursts of mournful whimpers from the blood array. Shadows of remnant souls appeared from the array. There were old and young, cultivators and mortals. There was no end to it, and it was like the gates of hell had opened. The radiance around the demonic halberd was almost instantly devoured by the thousands of remnant souls. In fact, the surging battle aura became even more terrifying. Crack! Even so, 10,000 demon guards and 10 great saint stage experts gathered together to attack with the halberd. It still caused a slight crack to appear on the blood formation. You guys stay here. I'll enter the array and kill the demons. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. He suddenly took a step forward and flew away. Young master, I'll go with you. Xianyuan Weiyang's pretty face turned serious. She grabbed Ling Xiao's arm and flew into the ancient array, disappearing without a trace. Just went in. Above the void, the faces of many disciples froze, and a hint of respect gradually appeared in their eyes. Indeed, the rumors were true. The young master of the Ling people was righteous and fearless. He was the backbone of the human race. The blood matrix alone could withstand the attacks of 10,000 people, including 10 saints. The sky demon's methods were obvious. Even so, Master Ling Xiao still charged in without hesitation, all for the sake of stopping the sky demon's blood sacrifice and fighting for a wisp of life for the human race. However, it appeared that there was still a long way to go before he could slay this demon. However, as long as they could delay his growth, it would be a great fortune for the human race and the entire Azure Sky realm. Lord Ling Xiao, this is how you are. He never thought for himself. His heart was for the common people. He was righteous in the 9th heaven. No. I want to go back to the sect and ask the old ancestor to come out. Nothing must happen to young master. Yes. I will go to the Martial Emperor city now and report the situation to the Martial Emperor Lord. I'll go to the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb and see if the Sword Master can come out and slay the demons. A series of shouts came from the crowd. Streaks of light flashed across the sky and flew into the distance. This barren mountain was quite far away from the Sword Tomb and the martial Emperor City. Therefore, most of the people who rushed over after seeing the phenomenon were from the small sects nearby. Their strongest were only saints. Since this matrix was difficult for saints to break, they could only ask for help from primes. In short, nothing must happen to young master. Boom, boom. Blood chi spread out from the depths of the cave like an ocean. In the blood sea, two figures hugged each other tightly. Their bodies seemed to be bound by blood chains. They were like cicadas, unable to move. Not far away, the blood child holy infant sat cross-legged in the void. It led the blood chi to rise and gather between its eyebrows. At this moment, a blood-colored evil figure stood quietly above its head. As the blood chi surged, the figure gradually solidified, as if it was going to break through the barrier of the epic and appear in the world. Sire, why are you so silly? In the blood pool, Chen Qingshan's face was pale. The winding blood chains seemed to have pierced into his bones and flesh, devouring his spiritual power and bloodline. Qingshan, I've said it before. No matter if it's a mountain or a sea of stars or hell, I'll go with you. Dream Demon's eyes were gentle as she nestled in Chen Qingshan's arms. At this moment there were also blood chains piercing through her body. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a blood chain that tied the two of them together. Sire Qingshan. Actually, there's something I've always wanted to tell you. In the current situation, the two of them were most likely going to die. The feeling of losing their bloodline was irreversible. Dream Demon raised her head and looked at the face that was close to her. She reached out and gently held it in her hand. Qingshan, actually, Sire? You don't have to say anything. Chen Qingshan shook his head. His eyes were filled with tenderness. If one day I become neither human nor ghost, will you still stay by my side? Qingshan, I'm loyal to you. Who cares about appearance? That's right. Who cares about appearance? I won't let you die. No one can take you away from me. Chen Qingshan took a deep breath. A bright smile bloomed on his face. Then, Dream Demon was stunned to see that strange blood patterns began to spread from the young man's neck. They were densely packed like a spider web. Soon, half of his face was covered. At the same time, an extremely evil aura surged out. It actually shattered the evil shadow in the void. Waves of blood soared into the sky. Dark runes evolved and covered the universe. The rising blood mist suddenly froze in the air. Then it passed through the blood chains and converged toward Chen Qingshan. The blood child, holy infant, opened his eyes. He looked at the two figures standing in the middle of the blood pool like a blood cocoon in shock. His lips trembled, but he didn't say anything. What's going on? Why does this human youth have the divine bloodline of the Nether race? Buzz. Even. The mark of the Nether god between his eyebrows burst out layers of evil light uncontrollably. There was a deafening buzzing sound. Boom, boom, boom. The entire barren mountain was shocked for no reason. Even the blood array that enveloped the cave seemed to be overflowing with golden light. It was evil and mysterious. Damn it. He is merging with the power of the blood spirit array? Bastard. This is mine. I have the mark of the Nether god. So what if you are the descendant of the Nether god? In this life, I am the true god of the Nether race. The blood child holy infant looked unwilling. But no matter how he struggled, the blood power in the blood pool still surged toward Chen Qingshan unstoppably. It enveloped him and Dream Demon together. No! At the entrance of the cave, Ling Xiao slowly stepped out. Especially when he heard the miserable and desperate cry of anger, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. According to Chen Qingshan's model, when he awakened the Nether body and fell into the evil path, it was only the beginning of his immortal path. Therefore, Ling Xiao had guessed from the beginning that there might be some secrets about his identity. Now it seemed that this young disciple of an immortal sect who had fallen to the lower realm was very likely to be related to the sealed nether race. "Young master, what is that sound?" Xianyuan Weiyang hugged Ling Xiao's arm with both hands. There was a hint of nervousness on her pretty face. Hearing this, Ling Xiao sighed helplessly. She was clearly a coward, but she loved to put on a brave front. "It's an evil demon. It's very likely to be the sky demon. It eats people and only eats beautiful girls." If it weren't for Xianyuan Weiyang, he wouldn't have even bothered to waste words with this blood child holy infant. He would have killed him directly. However, there were still many of his fans outside the cave. Of course, he couldn't let his image crumble. The sky demon, Qin Chen? The blood child holy infant rolled his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. Yes, Qin Chen is in this blood cocoon. Earlier, he had already used many methods, but he couldn't even shake the blood cocoon at all. What was even more infuriating was that the blood spirit energy he had prepared for nearly 100 years had been completely devoured by the blood cocoon. With his current strength, it was very difficult to truly kill Chen Qingshan. Thus, he might as well use the methods of these two young men. Perhaps there would be some unexpected surprises. Oh? In this blood cocoon? Ling Xiao smiled warmly, and his figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. Suddenly, lightning seemed to shine in the cave, piercing through the 9 heavens. In Ling Xiao's hand, the supreme Saint Fu Tian was surrounded by thousands of rays of divine light and slashed down with the force of splitting the sky. This sword force was clearly beyond the scope of the Supreme Being realm. However, before the smile on the blood child holy infant's face disappeared, he saw that the thousands of rays of sword light were not aimed at the blood cocoon at all. Instead, they were aimed at his head. Ling Xiao stood in the void. There seemed to be a primordial mist flowing behind him, dispelling the evil and destroying the demonic barrier. Endless Taoist rhymes flowed and evolved into layers of divine and immortal patterns. The brilliance of a sword immortal was unparalleled. At this moment, even Xianyuan Weiyang's beautiful face showed a hint of greed. Black robes tied up his hair and a green sword in his hand. Especially that cold and handsome immortal face, which was as flawless as jade, inexplicably made people a little dazed. Buzz! The sword light slashed down, carrying an extremely vast power, and landed on the blood child holy infant's head. The blood child's face suddenly changed, and he became incomparably pale. Evil light began to bloom around him, turning into layers of fog. It was like an evil sun rising from the east, sweeping through the world. Boom! However, given the blood child holy nascent soul's strength, how could it possibly contend against Ling Xiao? Just as the sword radiance descended, a blood-curdling scream was heard. Where the blood fog was surging, a thin figure quickly retreated and landed at the edge of the blood pool. At this moment, a bloody wound appeared on the blood child holy infant's chest. The hatred in his eyes was even more sinister than the blood fog in the cave. The human race is indeed despicable. Forget it. Today, I will use both of your essence and blood to extinguish the hatred in my heart. As soon as he finished speaking, a vertical crack suddenly appeared between the blood child holy infant's eyebrows. There seemed to be a mark in it that was like an eye, exuding an indestructible evil. As expected, you are the vassal of the sky demon. Evil thing, how dare you compete with the sun and moon? Ling Xiao's expression was solemn as he shielded Xianyuan Weiyang behind him. When he saw the evil light suddenly enveloping the blood child holy infant, even Xianyuan Weiyang felt his heart palpitate. That kind of sinister and strange fluctuation was completely different from the aura of spiritual power. It actually made one's heart tremble unconsciously. However, fortunately, The young master was smart and saw through this demon's trick. Otherwise, if it were him, he might have fallen into this evil demon's trap. God of the underworld, mark, dark sifting world, the blood child holy infant shouted. The evil light suddenly flourished and turned into a blood world that was about to envelop Ling Xiao and the blood child holy infant. Young master, be careful, Buzz. But, before Xianyuan Weiyang could do anything, the world in front of him suddenly fell into darkness. There seemed to be a crescent moon rising, evolving into a world of destruction. Inexplicably, Xianyuan Weiyang actually saw many strange phenomena in that moon. Mountains, rivers, and thousands of miles of the star sea. An ancient aura gradually enveloped him until his mind was extinguished. All he could see was darkness. Clang, clang, clang. Suddenly, a bell rang in the azure world. In the Golden Crow Imperial Palace, Xue Xian was dressed in white. His brows were slightly furrowed as he looked up into the sky. His deep and bright eyes were full of seriousness. Young Master Xue, this is the evil being sealed by the Golden Crow Imperial Palace. Behind him, Jin Yuyang's expression was indifferent, and her tone was even a little cold. Just now, this young master of the Realm Lord Palace insisted that she open the seal, saying that he wanted to personally inspect the evil being in the palace. Even with this young master's means, he was shocked when he saw the power of the seal on the immortal foundation. This power was not spiritual power or soul power. It was more like a kind of origin power. It could be said to be mysterious. Back then, Ling Xiao had ordered Feng Ling to personally seal this place because he was worried that someone would enter the palace to investigate. Given Feng Ling's strength, even a paragon would not be able to find any clues. No more. Let's go. Xue Xian shook his head slightly and turned to walk out of the palace. The Realm Lord was missing, and there might have been a rebellion in the Realm Lord Palace. It was safe to seal this item here. Could it be that he really misunderstood Ling Xiao again? Does this young master of the Ling people really have nothing to do with the Sky Demon? Pass down the order of the Realm Lord. The second prince of the ancient Qilin divine dynasty colluded with the Sky Demon and deserved to die. From today onwards, the powerhouses of the four dynasties will submit to the Golden Crow Imperial Palace and guard this palace together. Chapter 1109. Elder Xing, send another group of World Divine Guards to guard this palace. Outside the ancient palace, Xue Xian looked up at the sky with an extremely cold expression. It seemed that the Sky Demon had taken away two evil treasures, and Ling Xiao had the ancient Qilin divine dynasty's treasure. As long as he guarded this place, this evil item would never appear in the Azure Sky continent. He had heard the Realm Lord mention the seal of the four dynasties. He said that this item was related to the fate of the Azure Sky continent. Once it appeared, it would be the beginning of the end of the world. Now that the Realm Lord was missing, the chaos in the Azure Sky continent had appeared. Although he had used the Sky Demon to create chaos, he had gained more time to grow. However, the situation had to be under control so that he would not lose this game. Yes, young lord. Lu Xinghe bowed slightly and nodded. Since the situation of the four dynasties has been decided, I hope that you will put aside the grudges in your hearts in the future and work together against a common enemy. If I find out that anyone is disobeying, I will kill them without mercy. Xue Xian's expression turned cold. He nodded slightly at Jin Yuyang and walked toward the direction of the Xinwu dynasty. He already knew where the Gone Sky Divine Sect was from the memories of the demonic sect disciple. However, in Xue Xian's opinion, this demonic sect was most likely a bait that the Sky Demon had deliberately set up. It could be abandoned at any time. Even so, it was better to destroy this evil sect to prevent more unforeseen events. At this moment, in the cave in the barren mountain, the blood-child holy infant looked at the girl in front of him, who seemed to have fallen into an illusion. His little face was full of question marks. Since when did my sifting world have such power? It can actually make people fall into an illusion? Little friend, do you have a lot of question marks? Just as the blood-child's mouth was slightly open and his expression was blank, he suddenly heard a cold and mocking voice from behind him. Before he could even turn his head to look, he felt a torrential force suddenly shatter space and smash fiercely onto his body. Damn it! The blood-child holy infant's expression changed drastically. The blood mist around him fluctuated, and he suddenly jumped up, trying to avoid the sneak attack behind him. However, at this moment, he clearly felt an extremely mysterious aura enveloping him. Time and space froze. Even the evil light emitted from his body seemed to be annihilated at this moment. Gulp. The blood-child holy infant's eyes were wide open. He tried his best to turn his head to look at the shadow of the fist. There, he saw a figure that looked exactly the same as the young man in front of him. A long time ago, Ling Zhao's main body had returned to Spirit God Realm with Double Shadow and the others. With the strength of his physical body, even a Saint Realm expert would find it difficult to withstand a single punch from him, let alone an Exalt Realm ant. At this critical juncture, an evil shadow appeared on the blood-child's body. His divine power was vast, and he punched out in the air, colliding with Ling Xiao. Underworld god body, immortal and indestructible. Boom! It was as if 100,000 meteors had fallen. If it wasn't for the blood array protecting the cave, the entire barren mountain would have been completely destroyed. The underworld deity art was the strongest body refining art in the world. It required the blood of living beings to forge a supreme physical body. Originally, the blood-child holy nascent soul had planned to use the blood formation to refine its nether body and completely merge with the nether god mark to become the only one of its kind in history. But who would have thought that everything would be ruined by a few humans? Despicable humans. In the eyes of the nether race, humans were only worthy of being sacrifices. How could they stop a revolution in the 9 heavens for no reason? In the primordial era, all races pursued the heavens. Even the ancient gods of the immortal race were only one part of this immortal path. There was nothing special about them. Under the leadership of the nether god, the nether race dominated the 9 heavens and suppressed all living beings. But this race was born evil. They sacrificed blood spirits, and their cruelty angered both humans and gods. In the end, all races joined forces to kill the nether god and completely seal this race. Originally, he should have led this race back to the world. Poochie. The moment the 2 fist shadows collided, the evil shadow's arm around the blood-child holy nascent soul shattered. Even the blood-child himself was sent flying by the huge force and smashed into the cave wall. Pow! At this moment, the blood-child's face was filled with extreme shock. He couldn't understand. With his nether body and the nether god mark as a contract, how could this human youth shatter his defense with one punch? Furthermore, what was going on with these 2 identical silhouettes? At this moment, the cave was covered by the blood array, so the blood-child didn't hear the immortal demon ancient bell ring. Otherwise, this little cutie would most likely be scared to death. You. Who are you? Blood dripped from the corner of the blood-child's mouth. The arrogance on his face had long disappeared. Who am I? Ling Xiao turned to look in the direction of the blood cocoon. He saw that the blood qi inside was surging. It was obvious that Chen Qingshan was about to come out. In the next moment, his figure suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already about 10 feet in front of the blood-child. Endless Taoist rhymes surged around him. It was vast and empty, and divine elephants overlapped. I don't care who you are. You must die today. I am the new nether god. My body is indestructible, and my soul is indestructible. The blood child Holy Nascent Soul's expression changed when he saw the black-robed figure coming through space. The mark between his brows emitted a terrifying evil light again. "You have quite a lot of little tricks." Ling Xiao smiled faintly. He didn't give the blood child a chance to perform. He punched out, and heaven and earth trembled. A black fist surrounded by endless demonic light smashed into the blood child's chest. The blood child had the body of an infant. Therefore, Ling Xiao's punch almost covered his entire body. Then, he was deeply embedded in the rock wall behind him. Poochie! The blood child Holy Nascent Soul's eyes bulged as he spat out blood from his mouth. At this moment, he seemed to feel that even with his terrifying nether body, his body and bones were still shattered by this punch. Even his internal organs were shattered and sprayed out of his mouth. There's something. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. He grabbed the blood child's neck with one hand and punched with the other. Boom, boom, boom. The rumbling in the cave didn't stop. It wasn't until the blood cocoon behind him suddenly rippled with endless bloody light that Ling Xiao's lips curled up into a smile. He had entered the blood formation to kill the sky demon. If there was no movement, wouldn't people be suspicious? And this was the reason why the blood child Holy Nascent Soul was still alive. So what if a venerate without any luck was the reincarnation of the Nether God, let alone the Nether God's sacred body? In front of the sky demon, even immortals and gods would be slaughtered. Moreover, it seemed that the blood child Holy Nascent Soul had just obtained a chance encounter. He didn't have the true ability to control the Nether God. Is it this mark? As Ling Xiao's last punch landed, the blood child Holy Nascent Soul's body was completely shattered. Only a cute little head was left, which Ling Xiao held in his hand. I am the Nether God, immortal and indestructible. Until now, the blood child Holy Nascent Soul seemed to be immersed in his dream of controlling the 9 heavens. He glared at Ling Xiao with hatred. Nether God? Give it to me. Ling Xiao snorted coldly. He reached out a hand and directly pierced it between the blood child's eyebrows, tearing off the mark that looked like a vertical eye. Ah! A shrill scream instantly rang out. Soul light suddenly bloomed in Ling Xiao's eyes. Thousands of soul runes swallowed the blood child's divine soul by force. Right at this moment, an extremely sinister aura suddenly flowed out of the cave. Buzz! Chapter 11:10. Buzz, buzz. Blood mist rose, and the terrifying aura of the underworld began to recover. The stone pool that had gathered the blood and souls of tens of thousands of creatures suddenly dried up. There seemed to be an evil figure standing in the void. Its scarlet eyes were like 2 bloody suns, striking fear in people's hearts. Even the mark of the underworld god in Ling Xiao's hand emitted an ear-piercing buzzing sound and released a monstrous bloody glow. Ling Xiao frowned slightly and finally let go of the underworld god in his hand, allowing it to fly toward the blood cocoon and sink into it. Boom! At that moment, the entire space in the cave collapsed layer by layer. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and put the trapped Xianyuan Weiyang and the pure Dao body into his realm. He looked coldly at the blood cocoon that was gradually shattering. He had already seen many things about the underworld from the memories of the blood child's soul. In fact, this mark of the underworld god was the inheritance left behind by the gods and Buddhas when he was killed. Unfortunately, the blood child Holy Infant was set as a villain. Even if he found such a treasure, he couldn't activate the opportunity within. He only used this item to obtain a cultivation technique called the Underworld God Art. Then, he used this as a contract to form the Underworld God Art to control the world. In the end, this blood child Holy Infant wasn't a true member of the Nether clan. According to Ling Xiao's guess, the Nether God had left behind this imprint when he died, most likely because he wanted to find a true reincarnated body so that he could be reborn. It seemed like Chen Qingshan might be the reincarnation of the underworld god. Boom! Boom! The underworld god art fell into the blood cocoon, and a thick and majestic aura began to rise. Blood mist lingered, and shadows of time appeared in the cave. Gods descended, and living beings died. Many strange-looking beings looked up to the sky and cried out in grief. Only a slender evil figure in blood armor stood between heaven and earth. He held a blood spear in his hand and looked up at the dense golden light in the sky. Boom! Everything was destroyed, and heaven and earth became clear. There was no longer a trace of blood flowing in the cave. Everything was like a dream. Ling Xiao looked calmly at the gradually dissipating blood cocoon, as well as the two figures hugging each other tightly. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. 30,000 Providence and the underworld god physique. Although Chen Qingshan's cultivation had not changed at all, his luck had reached 30,000. Especially the vertical line between his eyebrows. It was like an evil eye, causing people to feel fear for no reason. There were countless blood-red patterns around his body, emitting an ancient and terrifying aura of the underworld. The dream demon let out a soft moan and then slowly opened his eyes. What he saw was another pair of scarlet eyes filled with gentleness. Dream Demon's expression froze for a moment before he smiled brightly. Ahem, how long do you plan to hug each other? Ling Xiao's eyes were clear as he smiled. Hearing this, a hint of embarrassment appeared on their faces, and they hurriedly bowed to Ling Xiao. Greetings, my lord. Not bad. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. He waved his hand lightly, and then the 4 netherworld disk fragments instantly appeared in his hand. On the way here, Ling Xiao had tried to repair the underworld disk in the realms he was in. However, no matter how hard he tried, the abyssal disk did not react at all. Qingshan, try and see if you can repair the disk. Ling Xiao casually tossed the fragments to Chen Qingshan. Immediately, nether qi appeared around the latter, and then madly gathered towards the abyssal disk. In a trance, there seemed to be a world hidden within the disk. The world buzzed, and the world was forbidden. The shattered abyssal disk suddenly gathered and stood above the 3 of them like a complete object. Many mysteries flowed on it. Evil light, nether qi, and blood-red mist rose alternately, forming layers of evil images. Through the abyssal disk, the 3 of them seemed to see countless powerful and ancient figures suddenly rise into the sky from the other side of the world. They looked up at the sky. At this moment they were confused, but there was also unconcealable anticipation on their faces. The Nether race? Looking at the blood-red patterns covering the figures' faces, Ling Xiao's eyes suddenly flashed with a wisp of gloominess. Qingshan. My lord. Chen Qingshan's eyes trembled as he turned to look at Ling Xiao. At this moment, he could feel that the world behind the abyssal disk seemed to be calling out to him. Even though he had merged with the underworld god's mark, many of his memories were still blurry. But even so, the sense of belonging that came from the bones of his bloodline still made him feel a strange desire in the bottom of his heart. Conquering the 9 heavens, defying the gods and slaying the immortals. The Nether race was sealed by the immortals back then. Countless years have passed since then. This abyssal disk might be the opportunity for this race to reappear. Now, I'm sending you to the underworld to control this race and find the entrance to the seal. I hope that one day you can bring this race back to the 9 heavens great world. Ling Xiao's tone was low, and his expression was solemn. He had already made his decision when he knew the purpose of the abyssal disk. Since Chen Qingshan was inextricably linked to the underworld god's true body, he might be the fate of this race. The fate of a race was not as simple as 30,000. Even if he would face many dangers, when he finally became the new emperor of the Nether race, it would be the time for their fate to flourish. Leaving him in the azure firmament would only restrict his growth. The sun of destiny would rise in the face of adversity and become unparalleled in the world. This was the law of the ages. Moreover, Ling Xiao always had a big plan in his heart. A shocking plan to deal with the Realm Lord. The Realm Lord was already invincible in the azure firmament. Now that he was hiding behind the scenes, he must be plotting something bigger. What Ling Xiao needed to do was to find traces of him so that he could think of a way to suppress him. The Realm Lord had already suppressed all the races in the azure firmament. The 7 sacred halls were deeply rooted. Ling people might be terrified, but the Realm Lord might have a way to deal with them. Therefore, he needed to borrow another power, a power that the Realm Lord had never faced and could not control. The Nether race. This race was feared by the immortals. It was easy to imagine how powerful they were. As long as Ling Xiao could ascend to the throne of the Nether race, this race would become another trump card for Ling Xiao. If he could break the seal at the crucial moment, not only would he be able to suppress the azure firmament and force the Realm Lord out, he might even become the blade that Ling Xiao used to conquer the 9 heavens. With the help of the Dream Demon and the system's verification, Ling Xiao was not worried that Chen Qingshan would be disloyal. This way, he could map out the world. Yes, Master. Chen Qingshan nodded silently. A hint of vicissitude also appeared in his eyes. Yuan Jin, you will travel with Qingshan this time. Enter the underworld and control some people of the Nether race. First, create momentum for the god of the underworld. The bigger, the better. Let the entire Nether race know that Chen Qingshan is the reincarnation of the god of the underworld. He is also their only chance to return to the 9 heavens. Ling Xiao transmitted with his divine soul. His tone was calm. A race that had been sealed for countless years must want to regain their freedom and control the world again. Even if Chen Qingshan's cultivation level was not high, as long as they believed that he was the Nether race's son of destiny, they would do their best to support him. By then, with Ling Xiao's secret plan, this race would not have to be afraid of disloyalty. Yes, Master. Chapter 11:11. Go! I will wait for your return at Azure Mountain. Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, watching as Chen Qingshan and Dream Demon stepped into the crack of the Netherworld disk and disappeared without a trace. Even if it was, his plan had failed in the end. Chen Qingshan's death in the underworld did not affect Ling Xiao's plan in the slightest. After all, the place where the Nether clan was sealed definitely had a supreme method set up by the Immortal clan. If no one cooperated with them, how could they come out? Only after a long while did Ling Xiao put away the great Netherworld disk and suppress it within the glazed ancient pagoda. Then, he turned to look outside the formation. At this moment, he could feel the terrifying undulations coming from the formation. It was obvious that many righteous people had already arrived at this barren mountain between the divine martial dynasty and the dragon abyss sword tomb. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He waved his hand and released Xianyuan Weiyang from the realm. He then snapped his fingers. Xianyuan Weiyang's pretty face froze for a moment, then she looked around in fear and confusion. In the end, her gaze landed on Ling Xiao. Young master, I fell into the evil demon's illusion. Woo woo woo, why are you crying? Ling Xiao shook his head helplessly. He felt that with this Xianyuan Weiyang's naive personality, even if his talent was heaven-defying, if he were to come out alone, he would not be able to live past 3 chapters. Let's go. I've already killed the evil demon. Ling Xiao sighed softly and kicked the blood-child holy infant's little head out of the cave. Boom. At the same time, the great blood spirit array that enveloped the cave finally shattered. Countless streaks of blood splattered across the sky. Many experts from the various sects looked at the entrance of the cave with solemn expressions, only to see a ray of light flying out from within. Before anyone could make a move, someone had already cried out in alarm, "It's a head!" The blood spirit holy infant's small head fell from the sky. Its face was ferocious, and it looked extremely miserable. Seeing this scene, many people's faces were filled with astonishment. Buzz. At this moment, a buzzing sound came from the cave. Ling Xiao and Xianyuan Weiyang walked out slowly and appeared in front of everyone. It's Master Ling Xiao. The young master is out. Could it be? The crowd began to clamor. Countless geniuses from various sects could not help but smile. Ling Xiao only sighed softly. He lowered his head and looked at the blood child's head at his feet. Everyone, the evil demon in this formation has been slain. Unfortunately, it wasn't the sky demon, Qin Chen. It seems that this path of slaying evil still has a long way to go. But don't worry, everyone. Although I, Ling Xiao, have mediocre talent, I swear with my Tao heart today that as long as the sky demon is alive, I will be immortal forever. I will only find the traces of the demon and get rid of the calamity for the common people. Young master, righteousness. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Then, their eyes flickered with shock and reverence. As long as the sky demon is alive, I will be immortal? Think about it carefully. What kind of aspiration and perseverance was this? It turned out that Lord Ling Xiao was using the sky demon to urge him to move forward. As long as the sky demon is alive, how would I dare to fall first? For the common people, for the wish in my heart, I will work hard to climb until I stand at the top of the world and become immortal. Then, I will be able to fight the sky demon to the end. On the barren mountain, applause thundered. Some of the young geniuses were already in tears. They raised their heads and sighed. To be born in the same era as the young master was both unfortunate and fortunate. Everyone, let's work hard together. Ling Xiao nodded slightly. His expression was cold as he turned and walked towards the sky demon. Behind him, 10,000 demon guards followed neatly. Yao Guang and Jin Honor looked shocked. Their eyes were filled with complex emotions. No one knew what they were thinking. Farewell, young master. On the ancient warship, Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. This trip to the 4 dynasties had come to a successful end. Not only had he subdued 2 heavenly supreme servants, but he had also taken in all the foundations of the 3 dynasties. More importantly, Chen Qingshan had awakened his divine body and stepped into the underworld. Perhaps it would bring him a different kind of surprise. Among the children of destiny that he thought highly of, apart from Ling Tian and Xiao Po, there was only this insignificant celestial sect disciple left. Thinking of Ling Tian, Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. He lowered his head and looked at a mountain peak in the distance that pierced through the clouds. He saw sword intent all around the mountain peak. Even from thousands of miles away, it still made one's heart palpitate. It was rumored that even heavenly supremes did not dare to step into the sky above the dragon abyss sword tomb. The sword intent formed by the corpse of a sword celestial was terrifying just thinking about it. A few days ago, Ling Xiao felt a significant increase in his destiny value in the system. It was obvious that one of the children of destiny who had submitted to him had activated a new celestial opportunity. And according to Ling Zhao's guess, this person was most likely Ling Tian. Based on his stinky younger brother's model, he should be the 9 heavens sword celestial, an existence that could slaughter late-stage celestial slayers like dogs. Although the Shengzhou was a lower realm of the Foliaceae, it seemed that since this realm could give birth to the ancestral dragon sacred spirit, it might not be unable to give birth to the true children of destiny who could go against the heavens. Since Ling Tian could take the initiative to enter the dragon abyss sword tomb, it was likely that there was a fortune that belonged to him. Moreover, what really interested Ling Xiao was that according to Gu Chaoxiai, there was the last fragment of the 9 tribulations divine sword in the sword tomb. This ancient sword was originally a 9 heavens treasure. Even if it was broken now, its power was definitely not something an ordinary divine artifact could compare to. You two return to the divine battle domain first. I'll make a trip to the dragon abyss sword tomb. Ling Xiao turned to look at Jin Hon'er and Yao Guang beside him. Before the 2 women could refuse, his figure had already disappeared. Behind him, Xianyuan Weiyang frowned slightly. Although she did not dare to act on her own, she could not help but follow. Ba. Yaoguang softly chanted Buddha's name, her eyes filled with sorrow. In the end, she could not do as she pleased like Xianyuan princess, and she was also unwilling to be submissive. She was in a dilemma. Life was vexing. As for Jean Honor, she had already seen herself as Ling Zhao's servant and did not dare to disobey him. Young master, wait for me. Xianyuan Weiyang caught up with Ling Xiao. She was afraid that her young master would be angry, so her pretty face was filled with anxiety. Didn't I ask you to return to the divine battle domain? Ling Zhao's expression was calm, and he was neither angry nor happy. I want to follow you and broaden my horizons. Hearing this, Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He grabbed Xianyuan Weiyang's jade-like hand and descended towards the sword tomb below. That's right, the sword intent above the sword tomb was indeed extremely terrifying. However, Ling Xiao had not only perfected the sword Dao Law, but also the time and space Dao laws. Even the great Dao of destruction had merged with 20 types of perfected Dao laws and reached the peak level. How could a mere sword intent harm him in the slightest? Look, what's that? On the sword mountain, a disciple suddenly exclaimed. He looked up at the two figures who were stepping out of the void, and his eyes were filled with shock. According to the sword tomb's ancestral teachings, one could not fly above the sword mountain. Otherwise, it would be no different from courting death. Could it be that these two people had just been born and did not know this common understanding? Little brother, stop quickly. You will be cut into pieces by the sword intent. Chapter 11-12. Not good. He's falling down. What should we do? It's going to shatter. It's going to shatter. Go get the sword master. The entire sword tomb suddenly fell into panic. All the disciples looked nervously at the two figures that were walking down from the sky, waving their hands and shouting with all their might. There were even disciples who had already soared into the sky and tried their best to get close to the sword chi barrier, trying to stop Ling Xiao and the sword master. However, it was useless. On the sword mountain, Xiang Tian's eyes suddenly opened. There seemed to be a purple light circulating around his body, and even his gaze was extremely piercingly cold. He seemed to see a black-clothed youth walking over slowly above the blue sky. The sword intent around his body was crisscrossing, and he actually blocked the sword chi of the sword tomb 3 feet in front of him. At this moment, he was not as panicked and worried as the other disciples. His eyes were gradually filled with a dense battle intent. This was a sword cultivator, and he was the strongest sword cultivator among his peers that he had ever seen. That kind of sword intent that was as vast as a sea of stars. Even with his cultivation, he felt extremely oppressed. The sword maniac of the sword tomb, the #1 sword cultivator of the current generation. Xiang Tian's name had long since surpassed his generation. He was regarded as the peerless monster that was most likely to become an immortal sword immortal in the past 1,000 years. However, at this moment, he only felt an invisible sword aura slashing down from the sky. With every step that the black-clothed youth took, this sword aura became more terrifying and intimidated the heavens. Xiang Tian frowned slightly. He stood up and walked to the peak of the mountain. He looked up at the figure that was walking down from the sky, and the sword intent around him began to surge uncontrollably. Boom! Tens of thousands of sword intents went against the heavens and pierced through the sky. At this moment, the entire sword mountain seemed to have transformed into an edgeless heavy sword that destroyed the heavenly Tao and slashed through reincarnation. All the disciples of the sword tomb turned pale, and there was nothing but fear in their eyes. In the distant mountains, the sword master of the dragon abyss's eyes were cold, and there seemed to be the true meaning of the great Tao gushing out. Within 100 feet of him, there was no spirit energy and the Tao will collapsed. However, at this moment, he did not stop the youth's footsteps. Or rather, he could not stop him. This sword aura was unrelated to cultivation, and it caused the sword tomb to awaken on its own. Even, he could feel that there seemed to be a terrifying and ancient aura slowly recovering in the depths of the sword tomb. How could this be? When did such a terrifying youth appear in the azure sky realm? He was actually able to communicate with the sword immortal's corpse with his sword intent, causing the immortal who had been sleeping for who knows how many eras to have the momentum to fight. Who was this young man? Inexplicably, the sword master of the dragon abyss had a grave expression on his face as he sighed silently in his heart. With the momentum of the great competition, monstrous geniuses would emerge in large numbers. Even if the sword tomb had the intention to hide from the world, it seemed that it was no longer able to protect itself. Junior brother Ling Tian, look! Someone is challenging the sword mountain. In the ancient forest at the back of the mountain, Jun Mo Wu held the blood jade sword and raised her head to look at the distant sky in shock. Ling Tian furrowed his brows and swung immortal execution, knocking Jun Mo Wu's evil sword away. He said coldly, "Senior Sister June, it's best not to get distracted when fighting. Otherwise, my sword may very well pierce through your body." You, feeling the pain in her hand, Jun Mo Wu glared hatefully at Ling Tian. However, she seemed to have thought of something and her face turned red. "Pei! I'm not going to play with you anymore. I want to see who has the guts to barge into the dragon abyss sword tomb." Although Jun Mo Wu had not been in the sword tomb for long, she had long heard that the sword intent above the sword tomb could kill a supreme martial artist. However, what was going on with those two figures? They looked so young. Why were they tired of living? Looking at the beautiful figure in black, who had turned around and rushed towards the peak of the mountain, Ling Tian shook his head slightly. Suddenly, a lustrous celestial light bloomed on his arm. An indescribably vast sword aura spread out and cut the surrounding ancient trees neatly. Out of the 3,000 sword bones, he had already condensed 9 of them. Even so, he could be said to be invincible in the supreme martial artist realm. At this moment, Ling Tian was very curious. What exactly was summoning him in the sword tomb? Also, what was the inheritance of the celestial realm that the sword immortal senior had mentioned? I wonder what realm brother is in now. With my current cultivation, I should be able to fight with brother to my heart's content, right? Ling Tian's face revealed a rare trace of gentleness as his white hair fluttered in the wind. At this moment, in the void of the sword tomb, there was a sudden sword cry that spread over 30,000 miles. A ray of clear light fell from the sky and the world seemed to have quieted down at this moment. All was silent. Time was void, space was shackled, and a cold shout resounded from the horizon. A mere sword intent dares to obstruct me? Subsequently, an indescribably majestic sword aura rippled out leisurely, and it slashed through the sky for thousands of miles. The world was overturned and the sun and moon fell together. At this moment, the swords in the hands of all the disciples of the sword tomb let out a cry. Ling Tian was stunned. Not only was there no shock on his face, a wisp of dense pleasant surprise arose instead. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the extreme sword aura that descended and split open the sky. It was like a world-destroying celestial radiance from the depths of the primordial world, and it completely suppressed the sword intent that enveloped the sword tomb. After that, a familiar black-clothed figure descended from the sky under the astounded gazes of all the disciples of the sword tomb, and it floated like an immortal. There was a wisp of a familiar gentle smile on that peerless immortal face. His gaze was chilly like a clear spring that cleansed one's heart. "Brother!" Ling Tian stood on the spot, and a brilliant smile gradually appeared on his face. After that, he took a step forward, and his figure turned into a graceful swan as he dashed towards that peerless figure with extreme speed. Bang! The entire sword tomb rumbled as it shook. All the disciples were dumbstruck as they looked at the figure that descended from the peak of the mountain, and for a moment, they didn't know whether to be furious or reverent. The sword tomb had been established for 70,000 years, and there had never been a single person that dared to forcefully enter it in such an ostentatious manner. It wasn't only because of the sword intent barrier that coiled around the sword tomb, it was even more so because everyone that came to this sword mountain felt reverence towards the sword immortal that was buried here. But today, a young master that looked to be young had actually used the sword Tao to break through this sword intent that was capable of killing an exalted figure, and it was peerlessly magnificent and supreme. Who are you? Why are you forcefully entering my dragon abyss sword tomb? In the crowd, Wu Nian wore white clothes and had a serious gaze. Everyone knew that there were 3,000 sword cultivators in the azure sky, yet those that truly possessed the bearing of a sword immortal were all within the sword tomb. But never had he imagined that this young man alone would actually suppress the entire sword tomb with his sword aura. How absurd was this? Forcefully enter? Ling Zhao's brows raised slightly, and he spoke with a puzzled tone. Who set the rule that this sword tomb can't descend from the sky? Wu Nian was speechless. It seems that there isn't such a rule. After all, no matter who it was, they wouldn't dare gamble with their lives and dare compete with the sword immortal that was buried in the sword tomb. When they heard what Ling Xiao said, no matter if it was Xiang Tian or Jun Mo, a wisp of astonishment appeared in their eyes. Obviously, they'd never imagined that there would actually be someone in the azure sky world that dared to show off in the sword tomb. Why exactly have you come to my sword tomb? Brother Ling Xiao. Right when everyone was shocked and awed by Ling Zhao's overbearingness, an exclaim of surprise suddenly sounded out from the distant mountain forest. Chapter 11:13. Ling Xiao. In an instant, all the disciples of the sword tomb had a look of fear on their faces. Ling Zhao's name could be said to be like the sun in the sky in the azure world. He was the first young master of the Ling people in 100,000 years. His sword Tao was heaven-defying, and his heart was righteous. In fact, on the day he was born, countless mighty figures in the azure world believed that this child was the next sword immortal of the human race. Originally, everyone thought that these words must have something to do with his identity. Even if Ling Zhao's talent was heaven-defying, it was impossible for him to be a match for Xiang Tian. But today, they realized that the young master of the Ling people deserved the title of Sword Immortal. Even Xiang Tian did not dare to compete with the sword intent of the sword tomb. Buzz! Inexplicably, many disciples' gazes fell on Xiang Tian. At this moment, the eyes of the azure world's echelon were also surging with battle intent. It was cold and fervent, like an invisible immortal blade that was about to be unsheathed to fight for the world. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao did not even look at Xiang Tian. As soon as he landed, he saw the terrifying fate chi surrounding the sword maniac. Greater mastery of sword Tao, immortal sword saint physique. 8th stage exalt realm, saint intent, 20,000 providence. This was a leak that was growing well, and he did not look very smart. Sword fanatic? Since this person could be conferred as one of the 10 echelons with his exalt realm cultivation, one could imagine his talent and combat strength. It seemed that they had to think of a way to lure him out of the sword tomb. The recovery of spirit chi in the world of souls would definitely cause a commotion in the azure world. However, to a sword fanatic, those so-called immortal treasures and immortal sources were probably not tempting at all. They firmly believed in the sword Tao of the heart and nothing else. However, if an immortal sword were to appear in the lower realm at that time, would this monstrous genius of the sword tomb, who loved swords as if they were his life, be moved? What? How would I know that a celestial sword would appear in the lower realm? Can I put one in? Sun-er. Wu Nian and the others' eyes trembled slightly. When they saw a trace of grievance on Yi Sun-er's face, they suddenly had a guess in their hearts. Could it be that junior brother Ling Tian had offended this young master of the Ling people and fled to the Sword Tomb to avoid calamity? Otherwise, why would he have tried so hard to deny his relationship with the Ling people? Why would he have such a gloomy temperament and a world-weary appearance? Just as everyone was pondering in their hearts and their eyes were filled with thoughts, a piercingly cold sword intent suddenly gushed out from the distant ancient forest. The blue sky trembled. A ray of sword light split the heaven and earth, turning into a vast sea of stars. Among them, the statues of immortals and demons alternated. They were both righteous and evil, surging with vast power. Streaks of terrifying divine light of creation inscribed boundless great Tao Saint inscriptions wherever the sword light passed. They contained annihilation and rebirth, the pinnacle of mystery. Even Xiang Tian's eyes flickered with surprise when he sensed the overlapping immortal aura flowing within the sword intent. In just a few short months, this junior brother with a low cultivation and a mysterious background seemed to be unstoppable as he stepped onto the peak of the sword Tao. Furthermore, even if it was him, if he wanted to execute a sword insight that converged the might of the heavens and the earth and contained a myriad of Tao insights, he would have to exert all his strength. Junior brother, you can't. Wu Nian's expression changed drastically. He had guessed that Ling Tian and the Ling people must have a grudge. Today, Ling Zhao's sudden visit was most likely to provoke them. Although the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb was ranked in the Azure Immortal sect and was a supreme force, but in the end, this sect was not strong in its foundation, but in the inheritance of sword immortals. No one was willing to provoke a group of sword Tao freaks who loved swords as much as their lives. This was because since ancient times, when sword immortals were born, they could shake an entire sect by themselves, and their sword could defy the heavens. Even if there were only a few dozen disciples in the Sword Tomb, no one dared to underestimate them. However, no one dared to underestimate them because they were afraid, and the Taigu Ling people were a force comparable to the Realm Lord's palace. If this young master of the Ling people died in the Sword Tomb today, the people on the Sword Mountain would probably be plunged into misery and suffering. Looking at the piercingly cold sword light descending from the sky, Ling Zhao's face instantly revealed a smile. At this moment, he could feel that the sword intent contained in the sword light was earth-shaking compared to a few months ago. Not only was it mixed with the aura of perfect sword Tao, but it even faintly surpassed the scope of Tao laws and was close to the origin. However, although Ling Tian was strong, he was only strong in the sword Tao, but Ling Xiao was strong in all aspects, from his physical body to his soul, from Tao laws to his cultivation technique. There were no flaws, and he was invincible in the world. At this moment, he only calmly stretched out 2 fingers, freezing time and space. Countless strange phenomena began to appear around him. Immortals and Buddhas knelt down, demons and devils wept together, mountains collapsed, and divine trees were burned. The aura of primal chaos quietly spread out. There was no light in the world, and the sun was hanging in the west. At this moment, the only light in the world was on Lord Ling Xiao alone. Stalwart, tall, and straight. Then, everyone was dumbfounded when they saw that the moment the sword light fell, it seemed to quietly stop for a moment, and was actually directly caught by the young master of the Ling people, unable to move any closer. Crack! The sound of something shattering quietly entered their ears, and they saw that the sword light was destroyed in a breath, leaving behind an extremely shocking crack in space, as if to prove that the sword just now had the power to split heaven and earth. Gulp! On the Sword Mountain, the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the black-clothed figure with one hand behind his back and the other hand in front of him. At this moment there was not a trace of spiritual aura around his body, but that kind of natural Tao aura made people vaguely see immortals. The Emperor's momentum had been revealed, and he was invincible in the current generation. It turned out that this young master of the Ling people actually had the talent to crush his generation. Buzz! In the distant ancient forest, Ling Tian turned into an afterimage and stepped over. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Wu Nian, Jun Mo Wu, and the other disciples of the Sword Tomb immediately changed. Even Xiang Tian, who had always been indifferent, seemed to have a hint of hesitation on his face. No matter what grudges Ling Tian had with the Ling people, with Ling Zhao's strength, it would be easy for him to kill Ling Tian. Ling Tian's sword posture was indeed heaven-defying, but his realm was really too low. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only endure and live. Only then would he be able to compete with Ling Xiao one day. Junior brother Ling Tian. Among the crowd, another black-clothed figure stepped out, and the blood sword in her hand emitted layers of evil light as she rushed towards Ling Xiao angrily. At this moment, in Jun Mo Wu's opinion, Ling Tian's actions were no different from courting death. However, how could she watch this little junior brother of hers, who had been practicing swordsmanship with her all day, die in front of her eyes? Although Ling Tian was a blockhead who only knew how to cultivate swordsmanship, he did not understand human emotions and was extremely cold. However, it was this unswerving determination that made Jun Mo Wu feel an inexplicable joy. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and looked playfully at the beautiful figure who was following closely behind Ling Tian. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. She had just stepped into the venerable stage, a flawless sword heart, and 10,000 providence. Moreover, from the looks of it, she seemed to have some feelings for Ling Tian. However, little brother, you should be pure and innocent. Listen to my advice. If you can't control the harem, let me do it. Let me bear all the curses in the world and bear the evil intentions of your enemies. As long as you are invincible in the world, then kill them all for me. Chapter 11:14. 1. The sound of a sword resonated between heaven and earth. A ray of blood light transformed into the sun and moon and fell from the sky. Instantly, the sword mountain buzzed, and the sea of sword chi pierced through the clouds and covered thousands of miles of the sky. It caused the surroundings to tremble, and heaven and earth turned dark. Although Jun Mo's cultivation was only in the venerable realm, both her flawless sword heart and the evil sword in her hand were the result of Qing Tsang's talent. Therefore, although this sword could not be compared to Ling Tian and Xiang Tian, it was still at the peak of the sword Dao, and it was shocking. However, just as Jun Mo Wu held the blood sword tightly and was about to slash it towards Ling Xiao, she suddenly trembled as though she was struck by lightning, and she was stunned on the spot. Not only her. At this moment, even Wu Nian, Xiang Tian, and the others had a stunned expression on their faces. Especially Xiang Tian, the current sword maniac, who was a man of few words, did not show his emotions. However, at this moment, his mouth was also wide open, and he had a stunned expression on his face. At this moment, Ling Tian's figure landed on the ground, and he suddenly opened his arms, wanting to hug the young master of the Ling people. There was even a bright smile on his face that had never been seen before. On the other hand, Ling Xiao shook his head and sighed. He stretched out a finger and pointed at Ling Tian's forehead, stopping him from hugging. "How old are you? You're still so childish and immature." Ling Xiao smiled faintly, and his expression was gentle, with a benevolent smile on his face. Of course, what made him happy was not the reunion with this cheap brother of his, but the 30,000 points of providence on this cheap brother of his. In just a few months, his cultivation had stepped into the venerable stage. Besides that, Ling Xiao felt that his temperament seemed to have changed greatly. At this moment, Ling Tian stood there like an immortal sword, and he gave off an inexplicable pressure. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Gasps could be heard all around the mountain. Even Jun Mo Wu stopped in her tracks, holding the blood sword in her hand, and her red lips slightly opened. Junior brother Ling Tian actually smiled. He could actually smile. Inexplicably, Jun Mo Wu felt a sense of loss in her heart. Perhaps he really didn't have any feelings for her? Brother Ling Xiao. In the crowd, Yi Sun-er's face was haggard. She walked quickly to Ling Xiao. But when she saw Xianyuan Weiyang beside him, she sighed softly in her heart. Indeed, as the world grew bigger, his horizons grew wider. The person standing beside him was becoming more and more elegant. Although Xianyuan Weiyang had never entered the world, she was still the current princess of an emperor clan. Whether it was her character, appearance, or temperament, they were all top-notch. Compared to her, Yi Sun-er felt humble and ordinary. "Brother, why are you here?" Ling Tian did not notice the disappointment in Yi Sun-er's eyes. He only looked at Ling Xiao with joy. Big brother was still so strong, big. Even if she tried her best to chase after him and obtained countless fortunes, she was still easily suppressed by him. This kind of feeling made it hard for him to breathe. It was like a tall mountain, but it was also a kind of spur that warned him to never relax. "I'm here to see if you've been bullied." Ling Zhao's gaze swept across the disciples of the Sword Catacomb. Although his tone was gentle, the two fingers just now really made one's heart tremble. Thus, when they saw his gaze, many disciples unconsciously lowered their heads. "No. Senior brothers and sisters are all very good to me. Brother, how are you? I heard that recently." Ling Tian wanted to say something but stopped. Rumors were spreading all over the Azure continent. The Sky Demon was wreaking havoc in the world. It was the young master of the Ling people, Ling Xiao. He was the leader of the common people, chasing after the Sky Demon. He was even injured by the Sky Demon several times. Of course, Ling Tian did not believe these rumors at all, because he was the real Sky Demon, and his brother was carrying this sin for him. But he was still worried. After all, his brother had just entered the Azure continent. Although he had the Ling people to rely on, there were many strong people in this world. Once his brother revealed a flaw, he would be doomed eternally. "It's okay. You just need to focus on cultivating." Ling Xiao smiled indifferently and looked at Yi Sun-er. "Sun-er, why do you look so haggard? Are you unhappy in the Sword Catacomb?" No, brother Ling Xiao, I'm fine." Yi Sun-er forced a smile on her face and deliberately hugged Ling Tian's arm, looking very sweet. "Ling Tian, senior brothers and sisters are all very good to me. You don't have to force yourself to cultivate. With Ling Tian and me, your immortal path will not be easily stopped." Ling Xiao looked deeply at Yi Sun-er. From the way she looked at Xianyuan Weiyang, Ling Xiao guessed many things. Moreover, the black-clothed girl's actions just now were obviously related to Ling Tian. Flawless sword heart, not bad talent. But, brother, you can't ruin your image. Why don't you open your harem? White-haired sword cultivators should be pure love. "Thank you, brother Ling Xiao." In an instant, the joy on Yi Sun-er's face froze, and tears flowed down her cheeks. Only now did she realize that it was so easy for a person to break down. In the eyes of outsiders, she and Ling Tian were a match made in heaven and had gone through life and death together, and their relationship was extremely stable. However, ever since she came to the Azure world, or rather, since Jun Mo Wu appeared, Yi Sun-er always had a trace of inferiority in her heart. It was not because of her appearance, but because of the upper limit of her talent. She was very afraid that one day, she would not be able to see Ling Tian's backbone from afar. The person standing beside him would no longer be her, and all of their feelings would just be a thing of the past. However, today, with Ling Zhao's promise, Yi Sun-er finally put down a trace of worry in her heart. "Yes, I will work hard, and work hard to climb, work hard to stand side by side with him." Junior brother Ling Tian. At this moment, Jun Mo Wu suddenly smiled and walked to Ling Zhao's side. He looked curiously at Ling Xiao and Xianyuan Weiyang. These two are. My name is Ling Xiao. Ling Zhao's eyes were indifferent, but Xianyuan Weiyang ignored Jun Mo Wu. He held Yi Sun Er's hand and walked to the side. So it's the young master of the Ling people. I've heard a lot about you. Jun Mo Wu's pretty face sank, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Young master, I heard that the Bodhisattva of the Brahma Holy Land is now by your side all day long? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. From Jun Mo Wu's eyes, he could feel a trace of extremely obscure killing intent. It seemed that this sword tomb disciple and the Brahma Holy Land had some enmity. Master Ling Xiao. Not far away, Wu Nian and a group of sword tomb disciples slowly walked over with a hint of reverence on their faces. Brother, let me introduce you. This is my sword tomb's current eldest senior brother. And this is. With the foundation of the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb, naturally, it could not be compared to Ling Xiao. Therefore, at this moment, the faces of all the sword tomb disciples were filled with reverence. No matter where the strong went, they should be respected. Moreover, Ling Zhao's sword and finger just now was already the direction of everyone's sword heart. Ling Tian, I have something to say to you. In the end, Ling Xiao gave Ling Tian a look, and the two of them walked into the forest in the distance. Jun Mo Wu's eyes flashed with a hint of gloominess. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao did not look at her directly. This feeling was very bad. Chapter 11:15. Brother, what's wrong? In the ancient forest of Sword Mountain, mist was flowing. Ling Tian looked at Ling Xiao in confusion. At this moment, he could feel that his brother's mood was somewhat heavy. What's going on? Is this Jun Mo Wu? Ling Xiao frowned slightly and looked at Ling Tian coldly. Brother, Mo Wu's background is very pitiful. Her father was once as famous as the sword master, but he cultivated the demonic sword. He was killed by a senior monk of the Brahma Holy Land in the extreme north. It is said that his later years were very miserable. This is called miserable? Ling Xiao shook his head, but he had some guesses in his heart. According to this woman's plot, she would most likely kill her way to the Buddhist sects in the future. However, there was a bodhisattva in the extreme west who was much more fortunate than her. Therefore, according to the plot, the one who would avenge her in the end was very likely to be Ling Tian. Femme fatale, this was probably the case. This woman has evil intentions. You'd better stay away from her. Ling Xiao said indifferently as he sized Ling Tian up. Have you made any breakthroughs in your sword Dao recently? Evil intentions? Brother, I obtained the inheritance of a sword immortal senior in the sword tomb. It is called the 3,000 sword bones. 3,000 sword bones. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and a sinister look flashed across his eyes. Everyone knew that the sword bones were a sacred item for sword cultivators and were blessed by nature. Some people were born with sword bones and their Dao was formed naturally. Some people proved their Dao with the sword and cast their sword bones. However, no matter which method it was, a sword bone was an extreme talent on the path to immortality. 3,000 sword bones? Yes, just thinking about it is enough to make a sword. What can I say? As expected of you, little brother. Other people may not be able to condense a sword bone even after exhausting themselves and experiencing endless killing and sword chi piercing through their bodies. You can condense 3,000 sword bones just because you obtained an inheritance? Besides that, even though the sword tomb's inheritance can't compare to the primeval Ling clan, it has been passed down for a few tens of thousands of years at any rate, and there are countless shocking geniuses within it. But it just so happens that you obtained the inheritance of a sword immortal upon arriving here? Yes, it is because of luck. Are you familiar with this? In the beginning, His talent was peerless, but his dantian was forcefully dug out by the direct bloodline, and he was reduced to trash overnight. He was ridiculed by everyone, but in the end, he accidentally awakened his sword body, and rose to power in defiance of the heavens. He went through countless secret realms to seize treasures, and relied on his supreme luck to seize opportunities. In the end, he forged the name of Sword Immortal and suppressed his generation. However, how was he supposed to borrow the Sword Immortal's inheritance to study it? That's right. My brother, Ling Tian, has the bearing of a Sword Immortal. Brother, ever since I started cultivating the 3,000 sword bones, I always felt that the devil intent in my body was being suppressed. Why don't you cultivate for a while too? Perhaps it will be of some help to you. Just as Ling Xiao was sighing, Ling Tian suddenly opened his mouth and laughed. It can actually suppress the devil will? Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and pretended to be surprised. Ling Tian immediately nodded his head with a smile, and a soul light flickered in his eyes as he entered Ling Xiao's soul sea. Buzz! A buzzing sound resounded, and golden immortal characters appeared in front of Ling Xiao's eyes. 3,000 sword bones, slaying all immortals and demons. Although Ling Xiao had already fused 4 sets of devil bones and his physical body could be said to be invincible among his peers, the cultivation of these sword bones was just icing on the cake. But who would mind if his body was strong, big? Brother, your current realm, Ling Tian's eyes were filled with fighting spirit, and even his body seemed to be surrounded by sword radiance. Ling Xiao just smiled and shook his head. I'm giving you time to catch up, not to let you be arrogant and conceited. With your strength, you can't even compare to Xiang Tian. Could it be that you think I'm inferior to him? Brother, that's not what I meant. Ling Tian lowered his head in panic, and his expression was full of guilt. Ling Xiao patted his shoulder and said softly, I have a section of an ancient sword that fell in this sword tomb. If you have time, help me look for it. A section of an ancient sword? It fell in the sword tomb? Ling Tian was stunned, but he saw that Ling Xiao had already turned around and stepped towards the horizon. Wei Yang, let's go. Yes, young master. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao did not even look at Xiang Tian. At this moment, he thought that since this generation's sword fanatic had luck, that section of the divine sword was very likely in his hands. As long as the opportunity was right, Ling Xiao would have a fair battle with him and become the #1 person in the Azure Sword Dao. At that time, the luck of the sword tomb would only be on Ling Tian. No matter how hesitant the sword master of Dragon Abyss was, he could only teach Ling Tian with all his heart. As for the secret hidden in the sword tomb, it would most likely fall into the hands of this cheap younger brother. Danger and whatnot, of course, whoever has the best luck will go. What are we? We're villains, so of course we have to protect ourselves. In any case, Ling Tian will obediently share the fortune in the end. Do you understand? For someone with such a strong template, the fortune that they encounter is usually one of a kind in the 9 heavens. Back then, Ling Xiao had spent so much effort to make him submit because he wanted to help him share the fortune that he could not grasp at his age. As for Jun Mo, her cultivation was still low, so he told her to cultivate for a few more days. When her luck was at its peak, Ling Xiao would personally give her a fortune that would allow her to ascend to the heavens. They're leaving. When the two of them were far away, Jun Mo's figure appeared beside Ling Tian at some point. She had an aggrieved expression on her face. Junior brother Ling Tian, I didn't expect you to be one of the Taigu Ling people. Her blood feud was in the Western Buddhist land. However, she alone could not contend against the Buddhist head. Thus, she approached Ling Tian and tried to become his Tao companion. That way, she would have an extra support. What childhood sweetheart! The holy maiden of the celestial sect falling in love with the trash young noble? In this path of cultivation, anyone with a brain would always prioritize benefit. No matter if it was the righteous or the villains, they were all just pawns in the struggle for the heavens. The only difference was that the villain's evil was on the surface, while the righteous liked to cover this evil under glory. "I'm not." Ling Tian shook his head, his expression returning to its usual coldness. At this moment, facing everyone's gazes, he did not feel the slightest bit guilty. "You're not? Isn't Master Ling Xiao your brother?" Jun Mo said hatefully. "Junior brother, don't keep a low profile. I have nothing to do with the Ling people. My Ling is my brother's Ling, not the Ling people's Ling." Ling Tian looked deeply at Jun Mo, then turned and walked towards the back of the mountain. Hearing this, a trace of doubt appeared on the faces of the sword-tuned disciples. Brother's Ling? Could it be that this Ling Tian was actually a servant taken in by Master Ling Xiao and was given the surname Ling? Otherwise, in the entire Azure continent, who would dare to put the surname Ling in their surname? Looking at the figure gradually walking away, a trace of inexplicable disappointment flashed across Jun Mo's face. But after thinking about it, she felt somewhat relieved. Although Ling Tian was not one of the Ling people, with his identity, if he became enemies with the Buddhist sect in the future, Master Ling Xiao would naturally not sit idly by. In this way, there was a glimmer of hope for her blood feud. The entire Sword Mountain was deathly silent. A trace of complexity flashed across the faces of all the sword-tuned disciples. Most swordsmen had pride, but today, Ling Xiao's sword and 2 fingers had caused their hearts to tremble. Especially Xiang Tian, who was known as the #1 swordsman of this generation, there was a purple glow in his eyes. In an era, there was destined to be only one sword immortal. Originally, he thought that Ling Tian was the biggest obstacle in his path of swordsmanship. But now, it seemed that this young master of the Ling people might be his mortal enemy in this life. It had nothing to do with grudges, but only for an invincible heart of swordsmanship. With the purple imperial sword in his hand, no one in the world could withstand its sharpness. "Master Ling Xiao, you and I will have a battle in the end." "Young master, is that white-haired young man really your younger brother?" Above the blue sky, a golden chariot traversed across the sky. The majestic dragon might intimidate all living beings. Ling Xiao and Xiang Tian sat on the chariot and headed towards the deity battlefield. "Yes." Facing Xianyuan Weiyang's doubts, Ling Xiao nodded slightly and took a sip of the divine wine in his hand. This trip to the 4 dynasties could be said to be fruitful. Not only did Chen Qingshan awaken the god of underworld physique, but even Ling Tian also had the fortune of becoming an immortal. Although the 2 of them only had the cultivation of ants now, in less than 100 years, they would definitely become the sharpest sword in Ling Xiao's hand. The Daotian Academy was about to open, and Ling Xiao should return to the clan to cultivate in peace for a few days in order to obtain the sealed demonic bone. "Yang Yuan, you must not disappoint me." Ling Xiao's face inexplicably revealed a trace of a smile. He stretched out his hand and pulled Xianyuan Weiyang into his embrace as he looked into the distance. Sensing Ling Xiao's sudden action, Xianyuan Weiyang's beautiful face instantly turned red, but surprisingly, she did not struggle. "Young master, you drank too much. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.